one and all. On behalf of the Department of English Language and Literature, I extend my warm and heartfelt wishes to all of you present over here. At the same time, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed chief guest, Professor Kishore Kumar Basa sir, our esteemed keynote speaker, Professor Sachidananda Mohanty sir, our esteemed eminent scholar, tribal literature, Dr. Damayanti Besura ma'am, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor N.C. Panda sir, respected Registrar, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Lenka sir, and our Finance Officer, Shri Duryodhan Sethi sir. I also warmly welcome all the respected session chairs, faculty members, scholars, researchers, and participants to this inaugural session of the National Conference on Voices from the Hills, Tribal Literature, Indigenous Knowledge Systems, and Cultural Memory, a multidisciplinary perspective. The lighting of the lamp symbolizes the triumph of knowledge over ignorance, wisdom over darkness, and hope over uncertainty. To mark the auspicious beginning of this academic gathering, may I request our respected dignitaries to kindly proceed for the ceremonial lighting of the lamp.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Nijharini Tripathi, the head of the Department of English Language and Literature. So here I am, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our dignitaries and guests to the conference. The welcome address. It is a matter of immense honor and privilege for us to welcome Professor Kishore Kumar Basa as the chief guest of this national conference. Professor Basa is a distinguished scholar of international repute in the fields of archaeological anthropology. He is also a distinguished scholar in museum studies, heritage management, historiography of South Asian archaeology, and ethnoarchaeology. An accomplished academic, following advanced degrees in anthropology and ancient Indian history and archaeology from Utkal University and University of Delhi. His academic journey, marked by intellectual brilliance, began with securing top distinctions and gold medals during his formative years. With an illustrious career spanning nearly 4 decades at Utkal University, Professor Basa served as lecturer, reader, professor of anthropology, and also headed the Department of Anthropology. He was coordinator of the UGC Center of Advanced Study and played a pivotal role in strengthening anthropological research and higher education in India. Beyond the university system, he has held several eminent national leadership positions, including Director of the Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya, Bhopal, Director of the Indian Museum, Kolkata, Director Additional Charge of the Anthropological Survey of India, and also he served in the National Monuments Authority, Government of India. Professor Basa's scholarly excellence has been recognized through numerous awards and fellowships, including the Indo-French Cultural Exchange Fellowship and the prestigious Commonwealth Postdoctoral Academic Staff Fellowship at the University of Cambridge. He has presided over major academic bodies such as the Archaeology Section of the Indian History Congress and the Anthropological and Behavioral Sciences Section of the Indian Science Congress, reflecting his stature within the national and international academic community. We are deeply privileged to have with us today a scholar administrator whose contributions have shaped the disciplines of archaeology and anthropology in India, and whose leadership continues to enrich the preservation and interpretation of our cultural heritage. We extend to Professor Basa our warmest welcome and heartfelt gratitude for gracing this conference as our chief guest. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have with us Professor Sachidananda Mahanti sir. Professor Sachidananda Mahanti sir, PhD, is a national fellow at the IIAS Shimla. He is currently a member of the University Grants Commission, Ministry of Education, Government of India. He is the former Vice Chancellor of the Central University of Odisha and former Professor and Head, Department of English, University of Hyderabad, an institution of eminence. Dr. Mahanti was educated at Sri Aurobindo International Center of Education, Pondicherry, University of Hyderabad, Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, University of Texas at Austin, and Yale University, New Haven, United States. Winner of many national and international awards, such as the Katha British Council, Fulbright twice, Charles Wallace, and the Salzburg, he has published extensively in the field of British American gender translation and post-colonial studies. His books have appeared in Oxford, Sage, Routledge, Orient Longman, and other notable publishing houses. Dr. Mahanti's contributions to the academic genres of travel writing, cosmopolitanism, institutional history, early women's writing in Eastern India, and post-colonial cultural history of India have been widely recognized as path-breaking at the national and international level. His essays and articles have appeared in some of the leading forums in India and abroad. He served as a member of India's Commission on Education to the UNESCO and was a member of the governing board of Auroville Foundation. He was a consultant to the Ford Foundation and senior academic associate at the American Studies Research Center, Hyderabad. He was fellow Cambridge Seminar on Contemporary Writers and Warwick Seminar on Literary Translation. He is advisor to the literary web journal, Muse India. We extend to Professor Mahanti our warmest welcome and heartfelt gratitude for gracing this conference as our keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, let me mention this particular thing about Professor Mahanti. We have with us the woman of prominence, Dr. Damayanti Besra. It is with profound respect and great pleasure that we welcome Dr. Damayanti Besra as the special invitee and eminent scholar of tribal literature at this national conference. Dr. Besra is a distinguished academic poet, cultural advocate, and Padma Shri awardee whose contributions to Santali literature, linguistics, and Adivasi cultural studies have earned her national recognition. With a PhD in Odia from North Odisha University for her seminal research on Moyurbhanjara Santala, Eka Samajika Sanskritika Adhyayana. She has consistently braced scholarship and lived indigenous experience through her writings, research, and public engagement. A former associate professor at Baripada Government College and principal of MPC Autonomous College Baripada, Dr. Besra has provided visionary academic leadership while nurturing generations of students in Odia and Santali studies. Beyond the classroom, she has emerged as a pioneering literary voice. In 1994, she made history as the first female Santali poet to publish a poetry anthology, Jivi Jharna, making a transformative moment in Santali literary expression. As the founder and editor of Karamdar, the first Santali women's magazine, she created an enduring platform for tribal women's voices and intellectual participation. Her major translation of Jayadaba's Gita Govinda into Santali stands as a landmark cultural achievement, expanding access to India's classical literary heritage for Santali readers and affirming the richness of indigenous languages within the national literary framework. Dr. Besra's exceptional contributions have been honored with the Padma Shri 2020 for her outstanding service to Santali literature and cultural preservation, the Sahitya Academy Award 2009, and the Poet of the Year Award for the All India Santali Writers Association. We are deeply honored to have with us a scholar whose work embodies intellectual rigor, creative brilliance, and an unwavering commitment to indigenous language, literature, and empowerment. We extend our heartfelt welcome to Dr. Damayanti Besra and express our gratitude for her gracious presence at this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Narasingha Charan Ponda, our Registrar, Rakesh Kumar Lenka, Sir, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Lenka, and Shri Duryodhan Sethi, Sir, who is the Finance Officer of this university. Whatever we do in the university, it is not just academic or professional. We feel this is our family. So can we give a huge round of applause for these three personalities here? Having said that, let me introduce the session chairs for today's conference. We have 19 session chairs, whom we call chairpersons. We have few from outside the university, few from within the university. We have Dr. Maguni Charan Behera, formerly Professor of Travel Studies and Director at Arunachal Institute of Tribal Studies, Rajiv Gandhi University, Professor of Indigenous Studies and Dean of School of Cultural Studies at Central University of Jharkhand, formerly Dean, School of Cultural Studies and Finance Officer, Central University of Jharkhand, Ranchi. We have Dr. Pratap Kumar Das, Associate Professor, Department of English, Rajendra University, Bolangir. We welcome you, sir. Dr. Priyadarshi Kaura, Associate Professor, Department of History, Ravenshaw University. Dr. Padmalochan Raut, Associate Professor in English, ISBM University, Raipur, Chhattisgarh. Dr. Sibani Gantayat, Assistant Professor, OES, the Department of English, Government Science College, Ganjam, Odisha. Dr. Manasmita Mahapatra, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, Ravenshaw University. Dr. Pitambar Behera, Assistant Professor, Postgraduate Department of English, Government Women's College, Sambalpur. Dr. Bobita Sarangatham, Assistant Professor in Linguistics, Barampur University. Dr. Alok Patra, Principal and Head of the Department of Sociology, Model Degree College, Malkangiri. Dr. Albin Rico, Assistant Professor in English, Government Degree College, Tentulikunte. Dr. Chinmoy Nanda, Assistant Professor, XIM University. Dr. Banisri Behera, Lecturer in English, Patneswari Women's Higher Secondary School, Patnagar, Bolangir. Professor Ratikanta Kumbhar, sir, from the Central University of Odisha. He is the head of the Department of Economics. Dr. Kapila Khemundu, sir, Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Sociology, Central University of Odisha. Dr. Dipti Shankar, Associate Professor, Department of Sociology, Central University of Odisha. Dr. Nikhil Gowda, sir, wish you our gratitude to him. He is the head of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Central University of Odisha. Dr. Saurabh Gupta, Associate Professor, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Central University of Odisha. Dr. B.K. Srinivas, Assistant Professor and Head, Department of Anthropology, Central University of Odisha, and Dr. Jayanta Kumar Naik, Assistant Professor, Department of Anthropology, Central University of Odisha, Koraput. From the bottom of my heart, I thank all of you for joining this conference. And without wasting any more time, without any delay, I hand over the mic and the podium to the moderator of the day, Swagat Mahanti. Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am, for that comprehensive introduction of our distinguished guests. Your words have beautifully articulated the intellectual vision and purpose of this conference. It is now my honor to invite our esteemed chief guest, Professor Kishore Kumar Basa, sir, to deliver his special address and enlighten us with his valuable insights. Sir, please.
Respected Vice Chancellor, Professor Bonda, a very modest man, but a well-meaning person. Respected Professor Mahanti, who will be delivering the keynote address, and the former Vice Chancellors of this university, and a dear friend. Respected Madam Damayanti Besra, a very well-known literary figure of this country, and my younger sister. Respected Dr. Lenka, Registrar. Respected Dr. Sethi, the Finance Officer. A very distinguished gathering, delegates, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure and privilege for me to be invited to this august occasion. And I must confess that until the last moment I was not sure whether I could come, but because of the unique persuasive skill of Professor Bonda and Nijharini, that I had to come. And what a pleasure. I would have missed this opportunity if I would not have come. There is another problem. I thought that I would be the last speaker. So I thought that I would gain the privilege of the keynote address of my distinguished friend, distinguished academic and friend. But I never realized that I'll be exposing myself the vulnerability of my ignorance. But that's the way things happen. Things do not happen the way you like, you know. So here I am with full guts exposing my ignorance. Now, the topic of the seminar is Voice from the Hills, and tribal literature, indigenous knowledge systems, cultural memory, and multidisciplinary perspectives. I think the topic is relevant, and I must say that when I say this with all conviction, that when we are saying that voices from the hills, it is not a kind of gesture that we want to hear the voice from the hills. It is not a condescending attitude that we want to hear the voices from the hills. It is that we do not have any other choice than listening from the voices of the hills. That's the point. And why do I say that? Because when you see the question of tribal literature, you see, and many of you are students of English literature, you see, when we see the approach of tribal literature, it is mostly either with a romantic imagination or with a condescending attitude. These are the two perspectives. And what is romantic imagination? Romantic imagination is that, when Romanticism developed in United Kingdom and also in Germany, the essence of the theory was that because of the industrial revolution, because of the insurgence of industrial revolution, the cottage industries, the textile, the traditional crafts have declined, the mass production of artifacts. So there was an element of going backward. We had a simple society, the society was better. But then there is an inherent philosophy, especially in the German Romantic tradition, that if you want to see the adolescence of Europe, you have to come to the Orient. Now there are different schools of thought. Some people thought that if you want to see the adolescence of Europe, you have to go to China. If you want to see, some people said, no, if you want to see the adolescence of Europe, you have to go to Egypt. And there are another group who said that, no, if you want to see the adolescence of Europe, you have to come to India. Now, to me, although the emphasis on tribal literature was associated with the emergence of Asiatic Society of Bengal, but then much of the tradition came in the later part of 19th century and early part of 20th century. And whether you see in the writings of Verrier, Elwin and others, there is that kind of romantic vision is there, that exotic aspect, the exotic aspect of tribal life being captured. And then that was being addressed to the Western audience as a counterpart to the complexities that people have inherited as a result of industrial revolution. Now, this is part of the story. But then the problem with the romantic imagination was that, you always say that, well, they are simple, they live in the midst of nature and that kind of thing. But then there is also a condescending attitude. That they do not know our language, they do not know modern science. So in that inherent, despite the so-called appreciation in the romantic imagination, there was if you read between the lines, there is an inherent message of civilizing mission. Because, you don't know much, therefore, we have come to civilize you. So, that inherent message of civilizing mission, if you read between the lines, that comes out. This is one perspective. Therefore, I think we have to reject that perspective. That's the reason this seminar is here. The second point I would like to make is that the emergence of post-colonial theory. The emergence of post-colonial theory has challenged the colonial stereotypes. You see, despite all the sort of rigorous approach of colonial ethnography, the important thing, one important common thread that comes out of colonial ethnography is the making of stereotypes. For example, the Gurkhas are the martial people. Supposing in Odisha, what is that tribe in Mayurbhanj? They are thieves. They were branded as Lodha. They are thieves. This kind of colonial stereotypes became the hallmark of colonial ethnography. Therefore, in the post-colonial situation, this is being challenged. And one of the reasons why it is being challenged is the question of autoethnography. I will be coming to that. But then another aspect is, the third aspect, why we do not have a choice rather than listening to the voices of the hills. The third perspective is the question of climate change. See, the point, what was happening until recently, even until the end of 20th century, what was happening? No, you see, these tribals, they do not know the modern science, modern technology, so we have to teach them, we have to teach them. It is our moral responsibility as a big brother attitude. But when we are in the midst of serious climate change, now people are coming back, reflecting on who is responsible for more carbon imprint. We, the so-called civilized people. Because of your industrial revolution, because of your technological advancements. So we are responsible for more carbon imprint. And if you think in terms of less carbon imprint way of life, who are they? It's the tribals. So because of these three reasons, I said, we do not have a choice. So we are not giving a favor. Please, for God's sake, do not think that by organizing a seminar like this, Voices from the Hills, we are trying to promote the tribals. You are not doing nothing about that. You do not have a choice. You do not have a choice. You have to listen to them. Unless and until you have this perspective, I'm afraid the purpose of this seminar will not be effective. Let me make it very blunt. So, therefore, we do not have, as I said, because of these three reasons, we do not have a choice rather than listening to the voices from the hills. That is the point. So they are no longer on the periphery. Please, for God's sake, do not think that they are on the periphery. You know, Eric Wolf wrote a book, very classic book, Europe and the People Without History. Very classic book. Point is, so now you have to think them that their discourse, their way of life, their approach to nature-nurture relationship, nature-culture relationship, how culture is nurtured in the midst of nature without much carbon imprint. Now that is the way of life we have to learn. So we have to unlearn what we have learned and we have to learn from what we have not learned. That's the question. That's the question. Now with this background, let me come back to my discipline, that is anthropology, where some kind of this perspective has emerged, and especially in the Northeast India. Now, that is what is known as autoethnography. Now, the autoethnography has got to do with the emergence of post-colonial perspective as an assertion of former colonies to decolonize their intellectual traditions. Now, one of the ways of decolonizing the intellectual traditions in the post-colonial perspective is to challenge the colonial stereotypes. Now, as far as this development of autoethnography is concerned, it interrogates and it contextualizes the colonial stereotypical narratives. It does. So what does autoethnography do? It, first of all, interrogates the why they have done it. And then it tries to contextualize also. These two things. Now, for example, let me give you night watchman as an opening batsman. So you have to tolerate. So, the point is, let us take the example of a very famous anthropologist, Forer Hemmendorf. He wrote a classic book called The Naked Nagas. Now, tell me, when he wrote this book, who was his term of reference? Where is the Nagas themselves? Was he writing for Indians? No. He was writing for his own countrymen. And therefore, he has to have certain kind of title which will be catchy, attractive. Do you think a Naga will tolerate a title like this? So this is what I call, the Nagas have serious reservation about this kind of title. Now they are coming out that how Forer Hemmendorf's stereotypical description of Nagas are not correct. Therefore, and a friend of mine, Professor Binoy Srivastava, who used to teach in Delhi University, he told me that in the last 15-20 years, a number of students from Northeast are coming to Delhi University, anthropology department. And he said that I used to ask my students, why you have come to this department or something like that. And he said that many of the students who are coming from the Northeast to Delhi University, they say that we are coming here to find out, we know what has been told about us, but we are trying to find out how to counteract them, the colonial narratives. So therefore, autoethnography has emerged as a very important genre in anthropological research in contemporary time. As a concept, autoethnography began in 1980s as a protest to the existing social science methodology of how the stories of the other were not accurately represented. The colonialist approach of authority, please, this is what Elish et al. I'm quoting. The colonialist approach of authoritatively entering a culture, exploiting cultural members, and then recklessly leaving to write about the culture for monetary and or professional gain, while disregarding relational ties to cultural members, was challenged. What was the colonial ethnography they were doing? They will enter into a culture. They will exploit their cultural members and they will write the way they feel like. And term of preference is their countryman, not you, not the tribal group they are studying. But then the term autoethnography was coined first by a very well-known functionalist anthropologist called Raymond Firth in his seminar on structuralism in 1966. What has happened was, Raymond Firth was remembering a debate in Malinowski's seminar. Malinowski was a professor in London School of Economics. And during 1930s, especially in 1938, there was a gentleman called Jomo Kenyatta. Jomo Kenyatta, he became subsequently president of Kenya. What has happened was, at the same time in London School of Economics, when Malinowski was professor, and he was conducting this seminar, Jomo Kenyatta's study of his native Kikuyu people. So Jomo Kenyatta belonged to the Kikuyu group. So he was presenting a paper on Kikuyu people. When Kenyatta first presented his field material in Malinowski's seminar, a heated shouting match happened with another Kikuyu speaker, a white African, that is LSB Leakey. Leakey is the first person who has, got many fossils. He's a very well-known paleoanthropologist. So Leakey also was a Kikuyu speaker. Now Kenyatta is a Kikuyu, or he belongs to that group, and Leakey also knew Kikuyu language. Now there was a heated exchange between them, and when in the presence of Malinowski. Now their argument raised the question of judging the validity of anthropological data by assessing the characteristics, interest, and origin of the person who did the field work. So whom do you prefer? Whether you prefer Kenyatta or Leakey. So therefore, gradually, so when Raymond Firth used it, this debate happened in 1930s, 1938. Raymond Firth was also present there in that seminar. But Raymond Firth, for the first time, he is using the term autoethnography after 30 years, almost 30 years, 1966. So now, autoethnography refers both to the method and the product of researching and writing about personal lived experience and their relation to culture. Auto involves, as you know, the turning of the ethnographic gaze inward on the self. What was happening until recently, or it was the study of the other. The community is studied by the white ethnographers. But when a member of that ethnic community is studying, so obviously it turned the ethnographic gaze inward, because an insider is studying. In anthropological approach, we call two approaches for following these linguistic approaches. One is etic approach, one is emic approach. Emic is insider's perspective, etic is outsider's perspective. So this is a research, but while maintaining the outward gaze of ethnography, looking at the larger context wherein the self-experience occur. Autography is also a research to conduct and write ethnographies of their own people. This is the simplest way of defining autoethnography. As a methodology, it acknowledges and accommodates subjectivity, emotionality, and the researcher's influence on research rather than hiding from these matters or assuming they don't exist. In the name of objectivity, in the Malinowski's tradition, we were supposed to be objective. We should not have our emotions reflected in our ethnographic account. But if you see, if you see Malinowski's writing, that is one way. That is, he appears to be objective and no emotions, nothing of the sort. But to the contrary, if you read Malinowski's diaries, which were published much later, lot of emotional conflict you will find in the diaries. So there is a discrepancy. So Malinowski's tradition of ethnography was that you should be objective, rational, so on and so forth. But autoethnography assumes that no, when you are studying your own community, your emotionality will be remaining. There will be some kind of subjectivity. Therefore, subjectivity and emotionality are not suppressed in autoethnography as a counter to other kind of things. Now, thus autoethnographers research themselves in relation to others. This is very important. So it is a research, writing, story and method that connect the autobiographical and personal to the cultural, social and political. Autoethnography should be, this is very interesting. According to Chung, autoethnography should be ethnographic in its methodological orientation, cultural in its interpretive orientation, and autobiographical in its content orientation. So in that sense, it's a methodological innovation. Reed Dunaway, for him, autoethnography is an intersection of three writing genres. First is native anthropology, in which people who were formerly the subjects of ethnography become the authors of studies of their own group. They no longer become the objects of study. They become the authors of their own community. Ethnic autobiography, personal narratives written by members of ethnic minority groups. And autobiographical ethnography, in which anthropologists interject personal experiences into ethnographic writing. So these are the three genres of autoethnography. It tries to convey to the reader the human qualities of both the ethnographer and the studied people, and thus to humanize the ethnographic encounter. This is very interesting. It humanizes the ethnographic encounter because a member of the community is studying the community itself. Thus, in the field of anthropology, this is an experimental genre. It is still an experimental genre. Now, as far as the concept of autoethnography is concerned, it captures tension between postmodern ethnography, in which the realist conventions and objective observer position of the standard ethnography have been called into question, and a postmodern autobiography, in which the notion of the coherent individual self has been similarly called into questions. Now, as far as the value of autoethnography is concerned, it allows us to access the experience of discrimination and understand it from the perspective of the person it is happening to. While someone can take care in understanding and experiencing the process another person is going through, nothing can take the place of someone speaking from their own position. So they are speaking from their own position. Now, therefore, to me, autoethnography is a very important component of the kind of seminar that you are organizing. And autoethnography has emerged significantly in Northeast India. If you see the tribal literature, Professor Maguni Behra is here. He has very rich experience of spending almost more than half of his life in Northeast. So I think he will agree with me that in the Northeast now, autoethnography has emerged as a very powerful genre of literary anthropology. Now, I will make a digression. I would just quote, and I am really a fan of Jacinta Carcata. I don't know whether, how many of you know Jacinta Carcata. Madam, you must be knowing her. She is the young lady from Jharkhand. Or his poems are very short, but so powerful, so powerful. You know, she has been translated, I think, in English, French, German, I think many European languages. Let me just quote a few of her poems. See, right, this is the Hindi. Nadi, Pahad or Bazar. Now, Jacinta Carcata is a powerful reflection on the lives and struggles of tribal women. And her work, as I have said, it has been translated to German, Italian, French. And she has got the Voice of Asia Recognition Award and the Youth Award of the Indian Language Council. Nadi, Pahad or Bazar. I just quoting one paragraph. Nanni pidi doudi. Nanni pidi. And she says that on a Sunday I was there. Then I went to market, and there was a young person representing young generation. Nanni pidi doudi. हम आ गए बाजार. क्या क्या लेना है? पूछने लगा दुकानदार. भैया थोड़ी बारिश, थोड़ी गीली मिट्टी, एक बोतल नदी, वो डिब्बा बंद पहाड़, उधर दीवार पर टंगी एक प्रकृति भी दे दो, और ये बारिश इतने महंगे क्यों? Look at the powerful this thing, Jacinta Carcata. I admire her is a very mild term. I adore her. Another poem, मातृभाषा की मौत. मां के मुंह में ही मातृभाषा को कैद कर दिया गया, और बच्चे उसकी रिहाई की मांग करते करते बड़े हो गए. मातृभाषा खुद नहीं मरी थी, उसे मारा गया था, पर मां यह कभी ना जान सकी. रोटियों के सपने दिखाते वाली संभावनाओं को के आगे अपने बच्चों के लिए उसने वींच लिए थे अपने दांत, और उन निवालों के सपनों के नीचे दब गई थी मातृभाषा. मां को लगता है आज भी एक दुर्घटना थी मातृभाषा की मौत. मैडम, you have to listen to them. There is no choice for you. The third one, सभ्यताओं के मरने के बारी. Look at the concept. What powerful concepts. ऑक्सीजन की कमी से बहुत सी नदियां मर गई, पर किसी ने ध्यान नहीं दिया कि उनकी लाशें तैर रही है. मरे हुए पानी में अब भी नदी की लाश के ऊपर आदमी की लाश डाल देने से किसी के अपराध पानी में घुल नहीं जाते. वे सब पानी में तैरते रहते हैं जैसे नदी के साथ. आदमी की लाशों तैर रही हैं मरे हुए पानी में. अब भी एक दिन जब सारी नदियां मर जाएंगी ऑक्सीजन की कमी से, तब भरी हुई नदियों में तैरती मिलेंगी सभ्यताओं को. लाशों भी नदियां ही जानती है. उनके बनने के बाद आती है सभ्यताओं के मरने की बारी. After this, I will not speak anything except saying that the English department is not doing a favor to the tribal people by organizing a seminar like this. Madam, you do not have a choice. You have to listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening and thought-provoking words. As our registrar, sir, has some urgent official commitments, he has requested to address the gathering first. So with your due permission, I would like to request our respected registrar, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Lenka sir, to address the gathering. Sir, please.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor N.C. Bonda sir, distinguished guests, respected Professor Kishore Kumar Basa sir, Professor Sachidanandan Mohanty sir, Dr. Damayanti Vesra ma'am, our Finance Officer Sri Duryodhan Sethi sir, esteemed faculty members, officers, staff and dear participants. It is my privilege to participate in this seminar which showcases the richness of tribal culture and literature. As we inaugurate this seminar today, we must also recognize the growing role of technology and software tools in preserving, documenting, and promoting the traditions. Digital archiving, language tools, and multimedia platforms help us record oral stories, safeguard rare manuscripts, and make tribal knowledge accessible to wider audience. These innovations allow us to connect traditions with modernity, ensuring that the cultural wisdom of tribal communities continues to inspire research, learning, and creativity. I congratulate the entire Department of English to organize this seminar for bringing together scholars, writers, and thinkers who keep our traditions alive. I am confident that the insights shared today will be inspiring, informative, and impactful. With these words, I conclude my address. Thank you.
I would now like to request our esteemed eminent scholar of tribal literature, Dr. Damayanti Vesra ma'am, to address the gathering. Ma'am, please.
Johar Marangburu, Joy Jagannath. আজি কেন্দ্রীয় বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় কোরাপুট ইংরাজী ভাষা সাহিত্য বিভাগর আলোচনা চক্রে মঞ্চ উপরে উপস্থিত এই বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়র মুখিয়া প্রধান माननीय डॉक्टर नृसिंह चरण पंडा महोदय, मो पूर्वरु जी आपण मानंकु पर्वतर उच्च शिखरर जो स्वर शुणाइले मोर बड़ भाई सम्माननीय किशोर कुमार बसा महोदय, आजिर जीए ये आलोचना चक्रर बीज भाषण प्रदान करिवे सम्माननीय प्रोफेसर सच्चिदानंद महांती महोदय, विश्वविद्यालयर रजिस्ट्रार कुल सचिव डॉक्टर राकेश कुमार लेंका महोदय, वित्त अधिकारी सम्माननीय श्री दुर्योधन सेठी एवं ए विभाग रो मुख्य जी आम मानंकु एकत्रित करिसंती मैडम डॉक्टर निर्झरणी त्रिपाठी महोदया, सम्मुखरे आपण माने समस्ते गुणी ज्ञानी विद्वान प्राज्ञ तत्सहित आदिवासी गवेषक माने एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट माने एवं आदरर छात्र छात्री माने मंच को मु प्रणाम करुछि। सम्मुखरे अधिवेशन करिथिबा प्रोफेसर मानंकु मैडम बसिछंती एठी स्वतंत्र भाव रे समस्तंकु मु जुहार करुछि ଏବଂ ଛାତ୍ରଛାତ୍ରୀମାନଙ୍କୁ ଅନେକ ସ୍ନେହ ପ୍ରଦାନ କରୁଛି। ଏହା ଇଂରାଜୀ ବିଭାଗ, କିନ୍ତୁ ମୁଁ ସେ ନିୟମକୁ ଭଙ୍ଗ କରି ଓଡ଼ିଆରେ ଆପଣମାନଙ୍କୁ କହୁଛି, କାରଣ ହିଲ୍ର ଭଏସ୍କୁ ଯଦି ଆପଣ ଶୁଣିବା ପାଇଁ ଚାହିଁବେ ତାହେଲେ ମୁଁ ଓଡ଼ିଆରେ କହିବା ପାଇଁ ହିଁ ଭଲ ପାଇବି। ପ୍ରଥମେ ଆପଣମାନଙ୍କୁ ସେଇ ଭଏସ୍କୁ ଆଗ ଶୁଣାଏ। जोहार गोसाई मारांगबुरु नेंदो सेमिनार न्युतुमते धूपबती गतमबती बाहाको एम्मामकान चालामकान सुक्ते सावारते आतंका तेलाका में गोसाई मा गोसाई नुआ कमी सार को सगुन मा आले हो नुआ तायम जो माले न्यू आले लाज हसु बहो हसु आलम सिरज आले बिरज आले गोसाई। ये होची हिल्र भॉइस। यार अर्थ होची हे परमेश्वर, हे मारांगबुरु, हे महाप्रभु, आमे तुमको धूप देलु, दीप देलु, फूल देलु, ताकू सादरे ग्रहण कर। आमर एई जो कार्यक्रम चली ताहा सुरुखुरुरे समापन हो। ଏହା ପରେ ଆମେ ଖାଇବୁ ପିଇବୁ ଗୋସାଇଁ, ଆମର ପେଟ ବଥା ମୁଣ୍ଡ ବଥା ନ ହଉ। ଜୁହାର। ଓଡ଼ିଶାରେ 64 ପ୍ରକାର ଜନଜାତି ରହିଛନ୍ତି ବୋଲି ଆମେ ସମସ୍ତେ ଜାଣିଛୁ, କିନ୍ତୁ ମୁଁ जो जनजाति मानक संपर्क रे प्रायतः आपण माने जानिछंती, आलोचना करा जाउची, पुस्तक रे पढुछंती, विभिन्न पत्र पत्रिका रे पढुछंती, से जनजाति संपर्क रे कहिबे नाही। मु निजे संताली संप्रदायर संताल मानक संपर्क रे अनेक किछि लेखाइछि। संताल भाषा संविधान रे स्वीकृति पाई सारलाणी, कॉलेज रे विभिन्न विश्वविद्यालय रे मध्य पाठ्यक्रम रे आसिलाणी, पढ़ाउछि। सेमानक विषय रे मु कहिबी नाही। आपण मानंकु जो मानंक विषय रे आलोचना होई नाही, प्रायतः से भली एक जनजाति संपर्क रे अवगत करेबी। से माने होउछंती केन्दुझर जुआंग संप्रदाय, जी जो मानंकु कि आपण माने प्रिमिटिव ट्राइब भावरे जानिछंती, अनग्रसर जनजाति भावरे। तेणु समग्र भारत देश रे आमर 75 गोटी अनग्रसर जनजाति अछंती। आमे जो मानकु वर्तमान पीवीटीजी बोली आमे कहूछे, पर्टिकुलरली वल्नरेबल ट्राइब ग्रुप रे से मानकु आमे रखिछे अनग्रसर जनजाति भावरे। सेति मध्यरु 13 गोटी होउछंती आम ओडिसा रे रहिछंती, एवं से माने हेले बंडा, बिरहड़, चुकटिया भुंजिया, डिडाई, डंगरिया कंध, हिल खड़िया, जुआंग, कुटिया कंध, लांजिया सौरा। लांजिया सौरा संपर्क रे एठी बसछंती महाशय, से ओडिया विभाग रे उपस्थापन करथुले प्रबंध। लोधा, मांकड़िया, पाउडी भुया एवं सौरा। जो बिरहड़ मानकर कथा कुहा जाउछि, से माने होउछंती प्राचीनतम जनजाति, जो माने विशेषकर संबलपुर रे बसवास करुछंती। वर्तमान बंडा और डिडाई आपण मानक पाखरे अछंती, ए मालकानगिरी रे अछंती। लोधा कथा जोटा बस सार कहूथिले, जो माने कि चोरी डकायती करंती बोली से माने जो अपजस गोटे पाइछंती, से लोधा एवं मांकड़िया मयूरभंज रे, डंगरिया कंध रायगड़ा रे, चुकटिया भुंजिया नुआपड़ा जिल्ला रे, पाउडी भुया देवगढ़ आउ केन्दुझर जिल्ला रे, कुटिया कंध कलाहांडी जिल्ला रे, हिल खड़िया मयूरभंज, केउंझर आउ सुंदरगढ़ रे रहिछंती। लांजिया सौरा तो रायगड़ा आउ गजपति जिल्ला रे अछंती। आपण माने से मानकु भेटी थिबे निश्चित भाव रे। आदिवासी मानकु आपण माने बेसी भेटुथिबे जेतेबेले नेता मंत्री आसुथिबे सेतेबेले आदिवासी मानकर खोजा पड़े सेतिकी बेले आदिवासी संस्कृतिर झलक आपण माने देखिथिबे मने हुए सते जेमती से माने नाचिबा गाइबा पाई जन्म हिछंती तांकर आ कोनोसी अधिकार नाही से माने केबे विचार करंती नाही जे जो माने आम पाई नाचुछंती गाउछंती से माने भी शिक्षित हेबार आवश्यकता रहिछि से माने शिक्षित हेले शिक्षा ग्रहण कले बाहर दुनिया को आसिले से माने मध्य आगो को बढ़ी पारिबे एवं जो स्वप्न आमे देखुछे विकसित भारतर से भारतर परिकल्पना जो आमे करुछे ताहेले ओडिशार जो आदिवासी माने अछंती सेमानंक संपर्क रे आमे न जानिले सेमानंकु आगो को न आनिले से विकासर स्वप्न केबे साकार होई परिबो नाही तेणु मु आपण मानकु से जुआंग संपर्क रे कहिबी जो मानक संपर्क रे बेसी आलोचना हुए नाही जुआंग संपर्क रे कहू कहू मु अन्य आदिवासी मानक संपर्क रे मध्य कहिबी मोर समय होछि आधा घंटा से आधा घंटा भितरे जतिकी संभव हबो कहिबी ए जो जुआंग मानकर मूल स्थान होछि गोनासिका किंतु समय क्रमे एमाने अनुगुड़ आउ ढेंकानाल जिल्ला रे मध्य वर्तमान बसवास करुछंती आदिवासी मानकर लोक कथा को लोक कहानी को आदिवासी मानकर उत्पत्ति संपर्क रे जदि आपण माने देखिबे ताहेले सेथिरे प्राय किए अंडारू जात होईछि किए आउ को बाउंस गजारू जात होईछि एमती सब किंबदंती रहिछि किंतु एठी व्यतिक्रम देखा जाए जुआंग माने निजकू ऋषिपुत्र बोली कहती से माने दाबी करती जे आमे होछु ऋषिपुत्र जुआंगर अर्थ होछि मनीष तांकर जो लोक कथा कहे से लोक कथा अनुजाई जन्हु ऋषि जड़े असुरणी कन्या को विवाह करिबा फଳରେ जुआंग मानकर वंशवृद्धि होइथिला जुआंग माने जेभଳି निजकू जुआंग अर्थ होछि मनीष सेमती सांताल माने मुंडा माने हो माने बीरहोड़ माने निजकू होड़ बोली कहती होड़ रो अर्थ होछि मनुष्य जेमती आपण माने बंडा माने निजकू रेमो बोली जो परिचय दियंती रेमो रो अर्थ होछि मनुष्य ए जुआंग माने ऑस्ट्रो एशियाटिक भाषा बा ऑस्ट्रिक भाषा कहि थांती जो माने ऑस्ट्रो एशियाटिक भाषा कहती सांताल हो मुंडा माहाली बीरहोड़ पहाड़ी खोड़िया ए मानकर भाषा प्राय जुआंग ए मानकर भाषा प्राय समान अच्छी परस्पर भाषा को ए माने बुझी पारंती अधिक तो विश्लेषण करी ना 1868 मसीह कैप्टेन जॉनस्टन साहेब ए जुआंग मानू लुगा पिंधेवा शिखेइथिले प्रथमे से माने पत्र को वस्त्र रूपे व्यवहार करुथिले जो लुगा को से माने साटिंग कते बोली कहंती तांको भाषा रे आउ तांकर जुआंग पीढ़ सबू रही राजा से राजा अमर सब पीढ़ सब दिया होता पीढ़ भितर जो मैंने सब बास करती से थानिया कह जाए थानिया जुआंग एवं पीढ़ बाहर जो मैंने बास करती से भागुड़िया बोली कह जाए से मैंने भागी बाहर को से सब भागुड़िया कह जाए मु जितेबाला संबोधन करुली से कुलपति महोदय को मु कहूली जे प्रधान मुखिया यही भाव में कहूली जे जुआंग पीढ़ रो मुखिया को से जेहेतु वॉइस फ्रॉम द हिल्स तेणु सी वर्तमान होती मुखिया आउ प्रधान ये जो पीढ़र मुखिया को से माने सरदार कहती आम सरदार बोली भी आज कहीपर ग्रामर मुखिया को प्रधान कहती पुरोहित को नागम कहती आउ अन्य मानू बार भाई एवं माँ भौणी कहती जुआंग कथारे अच्छी जोठी थिबे जुआंग सेठी थिबो मजांग तांको कथारे एमती अच्छी ये जो ग्रामर जो व्यवस्था रही समाजर जो व्यवस्था रही से व्यवस्था वर्तमान पर्यंत आदिवासी ग्राम रे रही थिबारु से माने प्रायतः थाना कोर्ट कचेरी को जाती नाही। तेणु आमे मध्य सेथिप्रति ध्यान देवा उचित जे एपर्यंत मध्य से माने शांति रे बसवास करुछंती। से थाना पुलिस फांडी ए सब को बहुत डरती, नाली टोपी को देखिले बेसी डरती। आगु तो सब नाली टोपी पिंधुले, ये से दिकु बोली कहती। साधारणतः आदिवासी माने अन्य मानू दिकु ना देइछंती, आउटसाइडर जो माने से दिकु ना देइछंती। तबे ये जो मजांग जोठी जुआंग ग्राम थिबो सेठी निश्चित भाव में गोटे मजांग थिबो एवं से मजांग बा ताको मंड घर मध्य कुहा जाए। मजांग भितरे सबु बेले गोटे गोंडी काठरे निया जळु थाए, ताकू ऋषि धुनी बोली कुहा जाए। एवं सेठी समस्ते गाँव जो वृद्ध माने अछंती, विपत्निक माने सबु अछंती, से माने सबु मजांग रे रुहंती। आ जो ऋषि ध्वनि चारिपाटे बसिकी से माने सबु विचार आलोचना करती। गाँव जेते न्याय निशाप है सबू सेठी से माने विचार करती। एवं से पाखरे से मजांग रे हरिण आउ गयल सिंह सबु टंगा होता है। आ सेठी मध्य चांगू गोटे टंगा होता है। ये जो बुढ़ा माने सेठी रुहंती, तापरे सेठी युवक माने मध्य से मजांग घरे शुअंती। तांकर गोटे मजांग अच्छी आ ता सहित गोटे आपण मानकर एपटे कोरापुट रे जेमती धांगड़ा धांगड़ी बसा सब रही, सेमती जुआंग मानकर गोटे कंगेर बसा रही आ गोटे सेलान बसा रही। ये जो मजांग भितर जितेबाला से माने बसंती सेठी अविवाहित युवक माने मध्य सेठी शुअंती। आमे भाबू जे सबु बेले से माने शिक्षित नुहंती, तांकर शिक्षा नाही, किंतु ये जो मजांग मंड घर जोठी रही, धांगड़ा धांगड़ी बसा घर जोठी रही, ताहा एक शिक्षा अनुष्ठान। से मजांग रे जेते बेले युवक माने शुअंती, बुढ़ा माने जो रही थांती, सेमानंकु गीत गप कृषि पर्वपर्वाणी सबु संपर्क रे सेमानंकु सेठी शिखे दिया जाए। सेमती जेते बेले झियो पिला मानकर जो धांगड़ी बसारे शोचंती, सेलान रे शोचंती, सेठी मध्य सेमती सेमाने केमती सांसारिक जीवन निर्वाह करिवे, केमिति तांकर सहयोग रहिबो घर परिवार पाई, केमती निजको प्रस्तुत करिवे, से सबु शिक्षा सेठी दिया जाए। तेणु आमे कहि परिबा नाही जे आदिवासी माने अशिक्षित बोली, सेमानंको पाखरे मध्य शिक्षा रहिछि। जी बर्तमान से मजांग तो बर्तमान नाही कि धांगड़ा धांगड़ी बसा नाही, सेटा क्लब घर रे बर्तमान परिणत हो गलानी। परिवर्तन बहुत भलो कथा, परिवर्तन को आमे स्वागत करबा, वेलकम करबा, कारण परिवर्तन ही हमको आगो को नबो। किंतु दुख लगे ताकू क्लब घर रे परिणत करबा फड़रे बर्तमान तांकर जो सांस्कृतिक प्राणकेन्द्र थिला जो जगहटा, से संस्कृति आस्ते 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 लोप पाई जाउछि। जो जे जो मजांग रे जे रहिला, जे सेठी सभ्य हबो जे, ताकू कंगेर कुहा जाए। एवं कंगेर हेबा पाई निर्दिष्ट दिन अच्छी। आंब नुआखिया दिन सीए सेठी दीक्षा ग्रहण करिवो एवं कंगेर हबो। बाहा हेबा माने अविवाहित युवकटी सेठी रहिबो, बाहा हे गला परे सीए पुणी सेटाकू छाड़ी दबो। तेणु यही आंब नुआखिया सी कंगेर हम। आउ सेलान जी हम, झीटी जी सेलान हम, सी 13-14 वर्ष होता आवश्यक। बर्तमान बयस झील मान बहुत शीघ्र बढ़ी जाऊँगी बोली सी आगुरी भी मजांग सी सेलान बसारे सी सभ्य हो पार। सी कौन कर पुष पुने दिन से जो सेठी जो स्त्री लोक माने सब रही थांती, से माने ताकू पिठा खुएबे, नुआ लुगा पिंधेबे, सेठी ताकू सभ्या करेबे, सबु किछि चाली चलनी से सेठी शिखिबो। प्रथा जहाँ रही जहाँ संस्कृति रही से सब को सी शिखिबो। विवाह पर्यंत सेठी रहिबो। विवाह करला परे तांकर गोटे शब्द रही कामतरा बा गुरुंटा जदि हो जाए ताहले सी आउ सभ्य पद ताकू त्याग करिबो। मु कहानी कही थांती सेलान आउ मजांग रो, किंतु ताकू कहिबे नाही। आ गोटे इंटरेस्टिंग कथा कहबी जोटा कि जुआंग माने जोठी बास करती से माने गोटे गोत्रर लोक बास करती एवं आदिवासी मानकर अंतर्गोत्र विवाह नाही। तेणु अलग अलग गाँव रे जो अलग अलग गोत्रर लोक जो बास कले गोटे गाँव गोटे गोत्रर आ गोटे गाँव आ गोटे गोत्रर सेटा हैला बंधु ग्राम। तेणु बंधु ग्रामर युवक माने ए मजांग को आसंती कंगेर बसा को आसंती एवं सेठी नाच गीतर आसर जमे एवं परस्पर भितरे बंधुता हुए। ए जो परस्पर भितरे बंधुता करिबा पाई मध्य जड़े कंगेर जदि से गाँवर सेलान को जदि भल पाउछि सी देखुछि से झील को जे मु या बह करने चाहे ताहले तार रास्ता अच्छी जे सी जीव ता घर को आ धुआं पत्र मागिब। धुआं पत्र कहले आजिकली जदि आम साधारण भाषा कहबा जे वर्तमान गुटका बोली आपण माने बुझी पारिबे सेतेबेले से दुक्ता पत्र धुआं पत्र खाउथिले से मागिबा पई जीव जदि ताकू सी न दिए ताहेले से कंगेरटी जानिला जे ए सेलानटी मते पसंद करू नाही तेणु सेठी आ विवाह हबो नाही। जदि से पसंद कले कौन करिवो से माने दुई जण जाक फूल बसिबे। आपण मानकर देशिया मानकर भी गोटे सेमती अच्छी मु जानी बाली फूल बसंती किंतु बाली फूल रे विवाह हुए नाही। बाली फूल रे विवाह हुए नाही किंतु एठी जो सेलान आ कंगेर भितरे जो बंधुता बढ़े से माने फूल सही बसंती। फूल सही बसिबे जुहार लो फूल कहिकी ताकू गोटे फूलमाड़ दब एवं से दिन ठू केही काहारी ना को उच्चारण करती नाही। आपण माने लक्ष्य करुथिबे आदिवासी माने स्वामी स्त्री रो नाम को केही ना धरिकी डाकंती नाही तेणु तार ना को उच्चारण करे नाही। फूल बसंती से माने एवं परवर्ती समय रे से माने विवाह करंती। तेबे मो मूल कथाटी को छाड़ी देकी आसीछि सेटा टिके आपण माननकु कहि दिए जे जुआंगो गाँव रे पिलाटीए जेतेबेले जन्म हुए तार नामकरण हुए से नामकरण को निमिंगचा बोली कहा जाए। तांकर शब्द रही निमिंगचा 5 दिन बा 7 दिन भितर यहाँ करा जाए। एटा किभली करा जिवो से व्यक्ति आदिवासी समाज रे व्यक्ति एकुटिया कौनसी कार्य करे नाही। सेठी गाँव रे जो प्रधान अच्छंती पुरोहित अच्छंती डाकुआ अच्छंती सेमानंको परामर्श रे गाँव जो 5 भाई थांती 12 भाई थांती एमानंकर परामर्श रे जाइकी कार्य हुए। मु आपण मानंकु सांताळ मानंकर गोटे कथा एठी कहूची जे सांताळ पिलाटीए जेतेबेले जन्म हुए सी सहर रे जन्म हो विदेश रे जन्म हो सी सेठारे जेते जाकजमक करिकी तार नामकरण करिथिले मध्य वर्षक भितरे गाँ को आसिकी ताकू गाँ रे 21 करिबा पई पड़िबो। जे पर्यंत गाँ रे तार 21 होई नाही से पर्यंत सी गाँ रो व्यक्ति भाव रे गणा जीवो नाही एवं तार कोनोसी सामाजिक कार्य होई परिबो नाही। विवाह भी हेबो नाही किंबा सी मरीगले मध्य तार मृत्यु संस्कार मध्य गाँ लोक केही करिवे नाही। एटा होची कंपलसरी आज पर्यंत मध्य एटा रहिछि। तेणु जुआंग समाज रे जेतेबेले नामकरण हुए निमिंगचा हुए सेतेबेले सी गाँ रो भार भाई माननकु आ माँ भौणी माननकु पचारिबो तापरे तार निमिंगचा करे। निमिंगचा कला बडकू छुआर बापा कोन करे गोटे दिन धार्य तो करा जिवो सी कौन करे ना तांको घर भितरे जुआंग मानक गाँ को जदि आपण जिबे घर को जदि जिबे से घर भितरे गोटे गात थिबो जोठिकी से माने कुटाकुटी करती मांडिया हैला धान हैला ए सब को कुटान ताकू कहते एसार गात से ढिंकी मैडम हाथ रे ही एमती ताकू कुटते ढिंकी तो बर्तमान ना ढिंकी तो शब्द हाथ रे ही धरिकी ताकू कुटिबे। तेणु से जगह पाखरे से चटाण को ताकू लिपिबो लिपि सारिकी हलदी गुंडरे गोटे मुंडुड़ा तैयारी करिवो चाउड़ कुढ़ी देई सेठी सिंदूर टपा देव झुणा देव धूप देव चाउड़ देव गुड़ देव क्षीर मिसाई पितृपुरुष ग्रामश्री माने ग्राम देवती गाईश्री आउ अन्य देवदेवी मानू 3टी कुकुड़ा बड़ी दिए। एटा होची पूजा एवं आदिवासी समाज रे सड़प हैला हांडिया हैला ताड़ी हैला जहाँ भी हैला मद हैला से सब निश्चित भाव रे पूजा होबो। सी तापरे पूजा करे से पूजा कला परे सी केमती पुणी सी श्लोकटीए बोलुछि शुणु संस्कृत रे तो नुह सी तारी भाषा कहूँ आपन को ओडिया भाषा शुणी दूची जे प्रथमे बापा माँ आसिकी ता गालरे हळदी लगाती तापर सी मंत्र पाठ करे पितृपुरुष धर्मदेवता को साक्षी रखिकी मंत्र पाठ करे हे धर्मदेवता वसुमती माँ बैतुनी पाठ माँ ग्रामश्री पितृपुरुष माने आज मो निमिंचा मो छुआपाई करुछि से कुशल रे रहू ता उपर को कौन सी विपद न पड़ू आमर भल फसल हो घर लोक गाई छेड़ी मेंढा भलरे रुहंतु बोली से प्रार्थना करे। आदिवासी लोकटे जेतेबेले प्रार्थना करुछि सीए समस्तों पाई प्रार्थना करुछि सी व्यक्ति कले मध्य सी घरर गाई गोरु छेड़ी जहाँ भी अच्छा समस्तंकर भल हो बोली प्रार्थना करुछि। या परे गाँव जो 12 भाई माने थांती माँ भौणी माने आसंती से माने अरुआ चाउल पकेकी छुआ को आशीर्वाद करती। आ नामकरण रे तो आपण माने जानी छंती जे से माने पितृपुरुषंकर नाम को पसंद करती जेजे बापा जेजे माँ कर नाम को पसंद करती। जदि छुआ बेसी असुस्थ हैला बहुत कांदिला ताहेले हुए तो ता ना को परिवर्तन करा जाई पारे। आ झियो पिला वर्षे हेले पुओ पिलार चुटी कटा जिवो 3-4 वर्ष हेले झियोर कान फोड़ा जीवो ए कान आ नाको कारण सबुआडे तो देखुछंती से सबुआडे पिंधंती ना कान रे नाक रे सबुआडे पिंधिबे तेणु कान फोड़िबा को लुतुर तंग बोली कहती आ नाक फोड़िबा को मोतेई तंग बोली कह जाए। जदि गहना न थाए ताहले निम काठी पुरे दियंती एवं परवर्ती समय जेतेबेले सामर्थ्य आसीबो जे गिल्टीटे सुनाटे कौन रूपाटे पिंधिबा पई ताहले ताकू से माने पिंधंती। विवाह कथा तो मु कहूली एवं विवाह रे तांकर 11 प्रकार विवाह रही से 11 प्रकार विवाह मु कही देउछि। गोटे होछि कमांडोरिया कनिया विवाह। कमांडोरिया होछि प्रस्तावित विवाह अरेंज मैरिज जोटा एथिरे बर पक्ष कन्या पक्ष उभय सदस्य मतामत लड़ा जाए राजी हेले विवाह हुए। आउ गोटे होछि टांके ओटी विवाह एटा अरेंज मैरेज किंतु जो मान सच्छल नुहंती अल्प खर्च रे जोटा हेई परिबो सेटा होछि टांके ओटी विवाह। आ गोटे होछि डिगर कनिया विवाह एटा होछि मैरेज बाय कैप्चर। एथिरे बर पक्ष कन्या को नहीं जानती तापरे विवाह हुए। आ मन माने विवाह तो जानी छंती सेटा होछि लव मैरेज। सुरुम कन्या विवाह होछि मैरेज बाय एलॉपमेंट एटा भी प्रेम विवाह से माने पड़े जीवे किछि दिन पय बाहरे रहिबे तापरे आसिकी विवाह हबो। उडुम कन्या विवाह एटा होछि मैरेज आफ्टर द गर्ल गेट्स प्रेग्नेंट ए व्यवस्था भी रोची मजांग रे विचार होबो तापरे से माने विवाह करिवे जोरीमाना किछि दबा पई पड़िबो तापरे विवाह करिवे। वाडी कन्या विवाह होछि चाइल्ड मैरेज। वर्तमान मध्य जुआंग समाज रे एटा रहिछि केवल जुआंग समाज रे नुहे आदिवासी समाज रे एहा रहिथिबारु प्रकृत रे आदिवासी समाज रो कोनोसी उन्नति हेई पारु नाही। कारण झियो खूब शीघ्र विवाह करिबा फडरे से निज विषय रे किछि जानु नाही पिलारो मां हेई जाउछि पिलारो जत्न नै पारु नाही जहा फडरे कि से माने आगु को आगे पारु नाहंती। एथि प्रति जदि आपण माने जो माने सब रिसर्च करूछंती से मानन को जदि आपण माने बुझेई पारिबे जे एते शीघ्र विवाह करिबा उचित नुहे ताहले हुए तो पाठ पढ़िले से माने आगु को आसी पारिबे। मेन स्ट्रीम कथा मु कहू नाही कारण मेन स्ट्रीम कहले मु बुझी पारे नाही कोटा को मेन स्ट्रीम को हाजिबो। आ बुरहा कन्या विवाह विडो रिमैरेज भी अछि। ये विधवा हेले दियोर को सी बाहा हेई पारिबो। आ गोटे सब बढ़िया सिस्टम अछि डाकी कन्या विवाह रिमैरेज ऑफ द डिवोर्स वुमेन। एथिरे आजिकाली रो जो मॉडर्न स्टाइल रे होची आमे लिव इन रिलेशनशिप रे रहिला परे जदि का पसंद करूने ताले जो अलगा अलगा हो जाउछे माने विवाह होला पर मध्य जदि सी चाहूछि ताकू डिवोर्स करिवो ताले छाड़ी परिवो सी अन्य जन को विवाह କରିପାରିବ ଆର୍ ଘର ଜୋଇଁ ତ ଯାହାଙ୍କର ପୁଅ ନଥିବେ ସିଏ ଘର ଜୋଇଁ କରି ତାଙ୍କୁ ଆଣିବେ। ଆଉ ହାଟୁଆ କନ୍ୟା ବିବାହ ଅଛି। ହାଟୁଆ କନ୍ୟା ବିବାହ କହିଲେ ଯିଏ ହିନ୍ଦୁ ରୀତିରେ ଯେଉଁମାନେ ବିବାହ କରିବେ ସେମାନେ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ହାଟୁଆ କନ୍ୟା ବିବାହ। ଏଭଳି 11 ପ୍ରକାର ବିବାହ ରହିଛି। କିନ୍ତୁ ଭଲ ବିବାହ ଯେଉଁଟା ସେଇଥିରେ ରାଉଳିଆକୁ ବା ଜ୍ୟୋତିଷକୁ ପଚାରିକି ସେମାନେ ବିବାହ କରନ୍ତି। 4ଟା ଚାଉଳକୁ ଥାକ ଥାକ କରିକି ରଖିଦେଇକି ରାଉଳିଆ ତାପରେ ଗୋଟେ ଟୋକେଇରେ ତାକୁ ବନ୍ଦ କରିଦିଏ। 8-10 ଘଣ୍ଟା ସେମିତି ରହିବ। ଯଦି ସେଇଟା ନ ଖସିଲା ତାହେଲେ ବହୁତ ଶୁଭ, ଯଦି ଖସିଗଲା ତାହେଲେ ଅଶୁଭ, କି ଉଭେଇଗଲା କୁଆଡ଼େ ତାହେଲେ ସେଇଟା ବି ବହୁତ ଅଶୁଭ। ଏବଂ ପ୍ରସ୍ତାବିତ ବିବାହରେ ଅନେକ ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚ ରହିଛି। ବରପକ୍ଷକୁ ସବୁ ବହନ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ପଡ଼େ। ପ୍ରଥମ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଯିବ ମଜାଙ୍ଗକୁ ଯିବ, ମଜାଙ୍ଗରେ ଯଦି ସମ୍ମତି ଆସିଲା ଗାଁ ପକ୍ଷରୁ, ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟବାର ଯେତେବେଳେ ଯିବ ସେତେବେଳେ ନଡ଼ିଆ ନେଇକି ଯିବ, ମଦ ନେଇକି ଯିବ, ଚାଉଳ ନେଇକି ଯିବ, କୁକୁଡ଼ା ନେଇକି ଯିବ, ଛେଳି ନେଇକି ଯିବ, ସବୁକିଛି ନେଇକି ଯିବ ଇଏ କନ୍ୟା ମୂଲ ଭାବରେ। ତାପରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ବାହା ହେବା ପାଇଁ ଆସିବ ସେତେବେଳେ ମଧ୍ୟ ସେ ମଜାଙ୍ଗରେ ରହିବ, ଗାଁ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ଖୁଏଇବ ପିଏଇବ, ତାପରେ କନ୍ୟା ନେଇକି ଯିବ। କନ୍ୟାକୁ ସେଠି ନେଲା ପରେ ସେମାନେ ସେଠି ତାକୁ ସ୍ୱାଗତ କରିବେ। ତା ଆର ଦିନ ତାକୁ ଉଷୁମ ପାଣିରେ ଉଭୟଙ୍କୁ ଗାଧୁଆଗାଧି କରିବେ। ଏଇଠି ଗୋଟେ କଥା ଦେଖାଯାଏ, ଯେତେବେଳେ ବାହା ହୁଅନ୍ତି ସେତେବେଳେ ସେମାନେ ଆମିଷ ଭୋଜନ କରନ୍ତି ନାହିଁ, ବର କନ୍ୟା ଆମିଷ ଭୋଜନ କରନ୍ତି ନାହିଁ। ପୁଣି ଯେତେବେଳେ ପୁଅ ଘରେ ବାହାଘର ହେବ, ବାହାଘର ସରିଲା ପରେ ପୁଣି କନ୍ୟା ଘରକୁ ଆସିବେ। ଏଇଠି ଚତୁର୍ଥୀ ହୁଏ। ଏଇଠି ପୁଣି ପୁଅ ଘର ଭୋଜି ଭାତ ସବୁ ତାକୁ ଦେବା ପାଇଁ ପଡ଼ିବ, ଗାଁ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ ଲୁଗାପଟା ଦେବା ପାଇଁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଏତେ ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚାନ୍ତ ହେବା ଅପେକ୍ଷା ଉଦୁଲିଆ ପଳେଇ ଯିବାଟା ଭଲ ବୋଲି ସେମାନେ ଏଇଭଳି ବିବାହ କରନ୍ତି। ଏତେ ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚ ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ଭିତରେ କେଉଁଠୁ ଆସିବ? ପୁଅ ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରିବ, କାରଣ ପ୍ରସ୍ତାବ ତ ପୁଅ ଘରୁ ଆସିବ ନା। ଆଦିବାସୀ ପରିବାରରେ ପ୍ରସ୍ତାବ ପୁଅ ଘରୁ ଆସିବ, ଝିଅ ଘରକୁ ଆସିବ ଏବଂ ପୁଅ ଘରକୁ ହିଁ ଦେବା ପାଇଁ ପଡ଼ିବ, କନ୍ୟାମୂଲ ତାକୁ ଦେବା ପାଇଁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ପୁଣି ଗାଁକୁ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆସିବ ଗାଁ ଶାଢ଼ୀ ସିଏ ଦେବ। ଏତେ ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚ ଜଣଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ଥିଲେ ତ, ଆଉ ସିଏ ଯେତେ ଖଟିଲେ ବି, ଯେତେ ମଜୁରୀ ଖଟିଲେ ବି ସେ ଏତେ ପଇସା କେଉଁଠୁ ଆଣିବ? ବାପା ମା ପାଖରେ ତ ନାହିଁ, ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ଭିତରେ ତ ରହିଲେ। ଯାହା ଅଛି ଫୁଲପତ୍ର ଗଛଫଳ ସେସବୁ ମାଗିଲେ ବା ମୁଁ ଦେବି, ଆଉ ଏତେ ଲୁଗାପଟା ମାଗିଲେ କେଉଁଠୁ ଆଣିକି ଦେବି ଭୋଜି ଭାତ କରିକି? ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଚାଲ ଉଦୁଲିଆ ପଳେଇ ଯିବା। ଖାଲି ପଳେଇ ଯିବା କଥା ନୁହଁ, ଉଦୁଲିଆ ପଳେଇଗଲା ପରେ ପୁଣି ଝିଅ ଘର ଖୋଜିବେ, ଝିଅ କୁଆଡ଼େ ଗଲା। ତେଣୁ ଖୋଜି ଖୋଜି ଯିବେ ପୁଅ ଘରକୁ। ସେଇଠି ପୁଅ ଘରେ ସେ ପ୍ରଧାନ ପାଖରେ ସେମାନେ ଅଭିଯୋଗ କରିବେ। ସିଏ କହିବେ ହଁ ଆମର ସାନ୍ତାଳ ସମାଜରେ ଅଛି। ପଚାରିବେ ଯେ ଆମ ଗାଈ ଗୋଠରୁ ଗୋଟେ ବାଛୁରୀଟେ ହଜିଯାଇଛି, ଆଉ ଆପଣଙ୍କ ଗୋଠରେ ମିଶି ଯାଇଛି କି? ଏମିତି ସବୁ ପଚାରିବେ। ଏବଂ ବିବାହ ମାନେ ପୂର୍ବରୁ ଝିଅ ଖୋଜିବା ପାଇଁ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଯିବେ, ଝିଅମାନେ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ଫୁଲ, ପୁଅମାନେ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ଭେଣ୍ଡିଆ ଶାଳ ଗଛ। ତେଣୁ ଝିଅ ଖୋଜିବା ପାଇଁ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଯିବେ ସିଏ ହେଉଛି ମୁଖିଆ ବଗିଚାର ଫୁଲ। ତେଣୁ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଏମାନଙ୍କର ମଜାଙ୍ଗ ଅଛି, ସାନ୍ତାଳମାନଙ୍କର ସେଇଟା ନାହିଁ, କିନ୍ତୁ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଯିବେ ସେତେବେଳେ ପଚାରିବେ ଆଉ ମୁଖିଆ ମହୋଦୟ ଆପଣଙ୍କ ଅଗଣାରେ ଯେଉଁ ବଗିଚା କରିଛନ୍ତି ସେଠି ଗୋଟେ ସୁନ୍ଦର ଫୁଲଟେ ଅଛି, ସେଇ ଫୁଲଟିକୁ ଆମେ ପସନ୍ଦ କରୁଛୁ ଏବଂ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ତାକୁ ଫୁଲ ବୋଲି ଗଣନା କରାଯାଏ ବୋଲି ଯେତେବେଳେ ସେ ବିବାହ କରେ ସେ ଫୁଲ ପରି ଡାଲାରେ ତାକୁ ଟେକନ୍ତି ଏବଂ ବର ଭିଣେଇ କାନ୍ଧରେ ବସେ। ସେଇଠି ସିନ୍ଦୁର ଆଦାନ ପ୍ରଦାନ କରାଯାଏ ଏବଂ ସେଇଟା ହେଉଛି ମାନେ ଉନ୍ନତ ଧରଣର ବିବାହ, ବଡ଼ ବିବାହ, ଦିକୁ ବାପଲା ବୋଲି ତାକୁ କହିବେ, ମାନେ ଏତେ ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚ ହେଉଛି କହିକି। ତେଣୁ ଜୁଆଙ୍ଗମାନଙ୍କର ମଧ୍ୟ ଏମିତି ରହିଛି। ସାନ୍ତାଳମାନଙ୍କୁ ମୁଁ ତ କହିଲି, ସାନ୍ତାଳମାନଙ୍କର ଆପଣ ଯେଉଁଠି ବି ପଢ଼ିଲେ ଆପଣ ଜାଣିପାରିବେ। ଏ ସମ୍ପର୍କରେ ମୁଁ ବି ବହି ଲେଖିଛି, ଆଦିବାସୀ ସମାଜ ସଂସ୍କୃତି ବହି ଲେଖିଛି। ଦାମୋଦର ଧାରେ ଧାରେ ଏବେ ନୂଆ ବାହାରିଛି ଆଦିବାସୀ ମହକ, ଏସବୁ ଆପଣ ପଢ଼ିପାରିବେ, ଦେଖିପାରିବେ। ବାହାଘର ତ ମୁଁ ସଂକ୍ଷିପ୍ତ କରିଦେଲି, ଠିକ୍ ଅଛି। ବହୁତ ଖୁସିରେ ଆମେ ରହିଲେ, ବାହା ହେଲେ, ଏନା ସଂସାର କରିବା। ତାପରେ ସଂସାର ସରିଲା ପରେ ଆପଣଙ୍କର ଜୀବନ ସରିଯିବ। ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ତାଙ୍କର ମୃତ୍ୟୁ ସଂସ୍କାରକୁ ଟିକେ ଦେଖିବା ସଂକ୍ଷେପରେ। ଆଦିବାସୀମାନଙ୍କର ବିଶ୍ୱାସ ଅଛି ଆତ୍ମା ପୁନର୍ଜନ୍ମ ପାଏ ତାଙ୍କର ନାତି ନାତୁଣୀମାନଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ। ए संपर्क में मोर गोटे कथा मन पड़ जाए आदि शंकराचार्य जो रही भजगोविंदम से जो कथा लिखाई पुनरपि जननं पुनरपि मनरं पुनरपि जननी जठरे शयनम ये चक्र घुरुथिव आमे जन्म नौथुआ ए विश्वास रे विश्वासी आदिवासी माने तेणु ये जो आत्मार शांति विधान पाई मृत्युर विधिसम्मत से माने व्यक्ति मरीगले तार विधिसम्मत तार संस्कार रही लोक मरीगले आपण माने देखुथिबे टाउन रे किए मरीगले कहीं जानीपारती ना पाख पड़ोशी भी किए मरीगले जानीपारती ना किंतु आदिवासी गाँव रे लोकटे जदि मरीछि ताहेले आदिवासी गाँटा सारा कांदरे उठिबो पड़िबो जड़े कांदिला माने पाख पड़ोशी समस्ते पुणी पलि आसबे सांगसाथी कि बाहु नेबे तार गुण गारिमा को गाइबे एलिजी बा शोक गीतिका जोटा सेटा से माने करती समस्ते आसिकी पहुँचती पहुँचला परे 12 भाई आसिकी पहुँचले सब व्यवस्था करा जाए सबको से माने कहती माला संताड़ माने भी माला ही कहती कहली जो ऑस्ट्रिक भाषा जोटा प्राय समान अच्छी किछि किछि शब्द सेमती समान रही जदि स्त्री लोक हो कि पुरुष लोक भी होता जहाँ जदि पिंधि थी सबू ताकू काढ़ी दियंतु काढ़िला परे ताकू कोकई रे पटिया बिछे दियंती पटिया बिछे देकी से सबको रखिकी 6-8 जन जे भी ताकू सब बोहीकी नहीं जाती सी जहाँ व्यवहार करुथाए लुगापटा जहाँ भी व्यवहार करुथाए से गुड़ाक सबू ता सहित सब नहीं जाती एवं से श्मशान रे रखी दियंती गोटे व्यतिक्रम होची एमाने सबको पूर्व दिग को मुंड रखिकी से माने शव दाह करिथांती एबे शव दाह समस्ते करूछंती आगुरु से माने पुतुथिले तापरे शव दाह हो सारा पर एका मुहा है कि से माने घर को आसती घर को फेरी आसला परे सेकेंड दिन पुणी आउ थे जाती जदि काले कौन रही जाइथिबो पोड़ी नथिबो सब से सबको देखिकी ताकू पुणी पुनर्बार ताकू पोड़ी दियंती किंतु आसारला परे द्वितीय दिन से माने कौन करती जे तंबा पैसा हलदी गुंड गोबर एवं दुब घास पड़ी गोटे पवित्र जल प्रस्तुत करा जाए सेटा सिंचन करती समस्ते से पवित्र हुअंती एठी आ गोटे इंटरेस्टिंग कथा मु आपण मानकू कहूची जे प्राय आदिवासी किछि आदिवासी ब्राह्मण धोबा बारिक एमानंकू डाकी थांती किंतु अधिकांश आदिवासी से निजे गाँव रे सी जी ब्राह्मण थिवो धोबा थिवो बारिक थिवो से माने ही निजे निजे से माने काम करती नख बाड़ काटिबा पाई से माने निजे ही सब करती अन्य मानकरू सेठी प्रवेश नाही ए स्वतंत्रता ए पर्यंत मध्य स्पेशलिटी जोटा तांकर ए पर्यंत मध्य रहिछि एवं तृतीय दिन रे से माने घर आ ग्राम को शुद्ध करती सेमती बंधु बांधव सबू आसबे ता सहित परिवार लोक 12 भाई श्मशान को से माने दा खणती कुराढ़ी तीर छता नुआ हांडी चाउड़ हलदी गुंड एगुड़ा सबू नहीं कि जाती एवं आसिला बेले जदि स्त्री लोक भी किसी अलंकार थाए से सब भी नहीं कि सेठी से माने रखी दियंती आ से जगह को जोठी पुड़ा होता से जगह को पूरा सफा कर दियंती बंधु कुटुंब से तो समस्ते आसी सारी थे खबर आसी सारी फेरिबा बाटरे से दिन कौन करती गोटे लालाग डाड़ आणती तार तो ओडिया ना कौन मु जानी मुझे पचारिकी जहाँ मुझे जानी ताकू लालाग डाड़ बोली कहती से डाड़ आणती ताकू तार अन्य नाम हूँ सुना उआस से डाड़ को भांगिकी आणती आ डांगर से डाड़र दुई पट को टिके काटी देकी तार टिके चोपा को छोड़े देकी बाहर कर दे थांती सेइथिरे से माने पवित्र हुअंती पवित्र जल को तैयारी करबा पाई मामू किंबा मामू संपर्कीय व्यक्ति किए जणे आसंती तांकर सेइथिरे गोटे पात्र रे हलदी गुंड 2-4 टोपा सोरिष तेल आ घर भितर कुकुड़ा को जो मरा होइथिबो तार रक्त छिटा टिके एटा को मिसेकी से माने छिंचिकी पवित्र हुअंती ता सहित सियाड़ी लतारे भात रांधि से मामू रांधंती ताकू सीए सियाड़ी पत्र रे देवादेवी आ पितृपुरुष मानकर भाग अर्पण करिथांती मृत व्यक्ति पाई भी मध्य सेठी भाग थाए एवं ग्रामवासी माने मध्य अन्य संपर्कीय माने मध्य से पवित्र जल छिंची हे गाँ को से माने पवित्र करती तापरे सबू पचारे जे घरर अवस्था किभरी अच्छी घरर मुरबी जदि चली जाए किभरी सुरुखुरे चलो न चलो ताहले सेमानकु साहाय्य दियाजिवो एभरी कथबार्ता है पर भोजी भात खाई गाँ लोक मानू चाउल खासी छेली ए सब दि जाए भोजी भात खिया जाए यहीपरी तांकर जीवन चक्र चले जीवन रे सुख दुख सब बेले चली रही जदि रोग बैराग है पत्र रस चेरर रस किंबा तार छाली ए सब को खाई से माने सुस्थ भाव में रुहंती माने एते समय तो नहीं आमर जो इंडिजिनस नॉलेज सिस्टम जोटा सेटा आपण मानकु मु कहि पारुनी तेणु एमती सुखरे रुहंती चांगु वाद्य को से माने बजाती चांगुर अर्थ होछि बुढ़ी छेली चांगुरे बड़ाम देवता आउ देवी कंचुणी बास करती आसंतु ताहले से चांगुर ताड़ टिके सुनिबा चांगुर ताड़ होछि एमती घिन घिनटा घिना घुन घुनटा घुन घुन घुनटा घुन घुन घुनटा टाकुन गुमटा घुन घुन घुनटा घुन 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 घुनटा फुलकुशी देवी डाहाण काने मोते झुरुथुबु दिने दिने एई भली सब गीत गाती आउ मो स्वर टिके आपण मानकु सुनाए संताल रे झीर विवाह स्थिर हो जाइछि आउ बरपक्ष आसुछंती ए समय गोटे गीत आपण मानकु सुनाउछि चांद सूरज मुनि कुनामियन नेडा सूरज मुनि सेटेरंताम तेहे निंद दोले सुनु मुसा संगमेया गपा निंद दोले विदय मेया यार अर्थ होछि तोर जो सूरजमुनि गोटे झीर ना जे तोर विवाह दिन धार्य हो सारी पूर्णिमा दिन तोर विवाह होब आउ तोर से दिन पहुँची गलानी तेणु आज राति तोते तेल हलदी लगेइबा काली राति बेलू तोते विदा करदेवा बाहा हैला परे झीटीए मु बोधे बहुत टाइम नहीं गले बाहला परे झीटीए पुरे ए झीटीए बधूरे परिणत हुए आउ समुदी समुदुणी मध्य देखा देखी हुअंती तांकर मध्य गीत रही समुदी समुदुणी मानक पाई ये मुंडा गीत जो विभिन्न संप्रदायर गीत मुझे ये मुंडा गीत खाली अल्प अल्प आपण मानकु कही देउछु तार मुंडा भाषा रे कहूनी खाली ओडिया भाषा रे कहूछि भातरे तो गोड़ी होइछि खुंदी खाई दियो आग नुआ समुदी कुंडारे करिछु हांडिया लसी पियो गो समुदी पिंडारे बसी सुना परिमाण कथा रहिले तेबे जाई भात खाइबू भले रूपा परी कथा मानिले हसी खुशी रे पीबू हांडिया लसी हो माने ग्राम देवती दिशावली को प्रार्थना करती भूमिज मानकर सब करम गीत अच्छी किंतु जेते बेले कोरापुट आसी कोरापुटर वर्तमान युवपीढ़ी किभली कविता लिखुंट से कविता शुणे कि मोर वक्तव्य को सारी बाली फूल कथा कहूली तेणु से कवितार शीर्षक हूँ बाली फूल बाली फूल माटी के पिटा की कुटा बाली फूल से तो कानर नाकर सुना तार उपरे हागा की मुता से तो सबुरमा बसा सार कहूले जसिंता केरकेटार गीत ये से भली गोटे कविता माटी काणी नाई कि भैरी नाई से सबू दकी पारे सबू सुनी पारे तमे पवन रे टटीती बांधी दियास माटीर माय जन हेबा चिटू जन आई उपरे उड़के पारे तार हेसी माटी तार पेटे टपेक ओसपने नाय रके बोली उड़ाए देसी फाप करी बादल उपरे माटी जुगे जुगे काले काले जुबा धांगड़ी बोली से सुंदरी कलावती लीलावती परा সে তার হাতে বনাইলা আছে কুপলি পর্বত নদী ঝরণ তার জনম পকনালে মাতর তার ছাতি ফুলে পরা উশ্বাস তার পেটে নাগ নাগনি পিঠতি জল কামিনী ছাতিতি ঠাকুরায়েন মুন্ড উপর সরগ হেলে পনে গরব নাই কি গুমান নাই গরব নাই কি গুমান নাই রোজ রোজ পানি মারলে ধোই হেসি তার গাগর ময়লা টায় টায় খরাতি শুকি যায় সে তার বতরলা পানা শীতে ফুটায় সি রূপার ফুল মাটি তো মাটিয়ায় কিয়ে গনসি তার মূল বালি ফুল বেল দেইর গীতে শিল ফুটা পানি পাজরা বয়সি কাচা কাটে লাগেসি জয় ধরতি নেই যাবে শৈবা সারছি সংসার হয়েছি ক্ষয় বালি ফুল মাটি আছে মনুষ আছে মাটি নাই মনুষ নাই বালি ফুল মাটি আছে মনুষ আছে মাটি নাই মনুষ নাই ଏ କବିତା ଜଣେ ଯୁବ କବି ସବ୍ୟସାଚୀ ବିଷୟ ନବରଙ୍ଗପୁରର ତାଙ୍କଠୁ ମୁଁ ସଂଗ୍ରହ କରିଛି ଆଉ ଆପଣମାନଙ୍କୁ ଅନେକ ଅନେକ ଧନ୍ୟବାଦ ଜଣାଉଛି ଭାବୁଛି ବୋଧେ ସେଇ ହିଲ୍ସର କଥା ଆପଣ ଯେଉଁ ଜାଣିବା ପାଇଁ ଚାହୁଁଥିଲେ କିଛି କିଛି ଆପଣମାନଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ପହଞ୍ଚାଇ ଦେଇପାରିଥିବି ଆମେ ଯେଉଁ ମୁଖ୍ୟ ସ୍ରୋତର କଥା କହୁଛେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆମେ ସେ ମୁଖ୍ୟ ସ୍ରୋତ ବୋଧେ ଆଦିବାସୀମାନଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ହିଁ ଦେଖିବା ପାଇଁ ଆମେ ପାଉଛେ ଯେଉଁ ଅକ୍ସିଜେନ୍ କଥା ଜସିନ୍ତା କେରକେଟା ଲେଖିଛି କବିତାରେ ସେଇ ଅକ୍ସିଜେନ୍ ଭିତରେ ଯେଉଁମାନେ ସବୁ ରହୁଛନ୍ତି ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ହିଁ ଆମେ କହୁଛେ ଅନୁନ୍ନତ ବୋଲି ସୁଖ ଶାନ୍ତିରେ ଯେଉଁମାନେ ରହୁଛନ୍ତି ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ହିଁ ଆମେ ଅନୁନ୍ନତ ବୋଲି କହୁଛେ କିନ୍ତୁ ଯୁଗ ଯୁଗରୁ ସେମାନେ ସେଇ ବୃକ୍ଷ ଏବେ ବି ଗାଁ ପାଖରେ ଜାହିରା ଅଛି ଶାଳ ଗଛ ଅଛି ବଣ ଅଛି ସେମାନେ ତାକୁ ସୁରକ୍ଷା କରିକି ରଖୁଛନ୍ତି ମୁଁ ଭାବୁଛି ଆମେ ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ବୁଝିବା ଆମେ ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ଜାଣିବା ଏବଂ ଏସବୁ ସମ୍ପାନରୁ ଆମେ ଯଦି କିଛି ପ୍ରେରଣା ପାଇବା ସେମାନଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ କାମ କରିବା ତାହେଲେ ନିଶ୍ଚିତ ଭାବରେ ସେମାନେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଆଗକୁ ଆସିପାରିବେ ବଢ଼ିପାରିବେ ଆମେ ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ଚାଲନ୍ତୁ ବୁଝିବା ଜାଣିବା ମୋତେ ଡାକିଥିବାରୁ ଏଇ ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟ ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମକୁ ନିର୍ଝରିଣୀ ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମକୁ ଆପଣମାନେ ମୋତେ ଶୁଣିଲେ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ଅନେକ ଅନେକ ଧନ୍ୟବାଦ ଏବଂ ମୟୂରଭଞ୍ଜର ଜୁହାର
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderfully engaging and insightful words. We are deeply honored to have with us our esteemed keynote speaker, Professor Sachidananda Mohanty. Sir, may I request you to kindly deliver the keynote address.
Good afternoon. In the digital age where we are overpowered by social media and seminar fatigue, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. I'm not going to inflict any lecture on you. Before I begin, and let me also thank Professor Nrsingacharan Bonda, the Vice Chancellor of this University, CEO Koraput, in absentia. He's going to join us shortly. And my dear friend, an eminent anthropologist, historian, and an authority on the monuments of India, Professor Kishore Basha, whom we heard with rapt attention and so much of erudition, and Dr. Srimati Damayanti Mishraji. And it is such a humbling experience to sit and to listen to you. In our days of politics of representation, I wish how often we should hear voices from the hills. And about the voices from the hills, the concept theme, which has been so well conceptualized by Dr. Nircharini Tripathi and so beautifully decorated here, the lovely ambience, I'm reminded of Marshall McLuhan, the media theorist who said, medium is the message. You want to know the message, think of the medium. And what could be more beautiful and scintillating than the ambience of this hall itself? Oh, thank you, Nircharini. You don't only have a kind of a concept note and the title of a seminar, but you have also framed the title of a book, Voices from the Hills. And so lyrical And we've heard lyrical words from two of our own preceding speakers. So allow me to offer a few prefatory remarks before I, get into the business of the keynote itself. First, I think it's a double bonanza for me because we have had a kind of a duet or jugalbandi since yesterday. Yesterday we had a seminar on tribal literature by the Odia department, so ably organized by Dr. Pradosh Swai, who is present here. And then today we have another seminar on tribal literature. As Professor Basa said, it's no favor we are doing to them, but it's indispensable that we really offer it to them in order for our own survival of the kind of crisis that we face today, And the crisis also has been voiced by the United Nations. The year of the indigenous that has been also proclaimed. But the first thing that I would like to say is that a dominant message so far has been poetry. Professor Basha, who is a hard-boiled social scientist and an anthropologist and a historian, has just acknowledged before us the inadequacy of anthropology and the supremacy of poetry and literature. And that is how it ought to be. Poetry and he's also following the sound footnotes of his senior colleague, and Sri Vishwanathan, who had once said that, if you want to understand post-colonialism, you don't need to go beyond social sciences. You need to hear the post-colonial novels and poetry, like Derek Walcott and others also. So I think it is only appropriate that the hall and the department, the ambience in which this discussion on Adivasi culture is being hosted, is also so acknowledging the supremacy of poetry, the supremacy of literature. This is not to devalue other disciplines which also have so much to offer, and we are here to acknowledge and hear those voices also. But poetry, and how appropriate it is that as I am speaking, I am witnessing the birth anniversary, a centenary anniversary of my mother, late mother, Bidut Prabhadevi. Bidut Prabhadevi's centenary has been observed since July 2025, and one of the first university departments that hosted was the Odia department. And your gentleman Vice Chancellor said that within 1 year we're going to really bring out a commemorative volume. And there are so many promises people make, and Robert Frost says promises to keep, but roads are deep and dark, but I have promises to keep. So we make promises, but how really promises are kept? CEO Koraput has shown the way. Within 1 year itself, a commemorative volume has been really produced. How wonderful it is. Next significant thing, and the Honorable Vice Chancellor is here, and I just introduce you as a gentleman Vice Chancellor. When we say jone bhadra loko, अन्यମାନେ कहती आमे कोन अभद्र लोक से कहती मोर प्रिय वाइस चांसलर आ अन्यମାନେ कहती मु कोन अप्रिय मु सही सेंस रे कहूनी but you have all seen him. He's so moderate, so gentle, and so reticent about himself, so which is why, and so full of propriety. ए जो क्वालिटी सब थिले आमे कहछने भद्र लोक मो माँ सबले कहउथिले भद्र महिला आम घरे मो माँ विद्युत प्रभादेवी कहउथिले भद्र लोक आसिले मो माँ मो बापा सबले मो माँ कहउथिले विद्युत प्रभा आसिले विद्युत प्रभा गले से केबे कहनथले तू पानी आन तू ये कर कहनथले सो आई हैव लर्नड इट एट होम to be bhadra lok and bhadra mahila. Before we become academics and intellectuals and scholars, we have to be bhadra lok and bhadra mahila. And we have to believe in the culture of dialogue, to listen to others. And my father said, son, why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth? I said, why dad? Why bapa? So he said, tu adhika sunibu, kam kahibu. So I think the art of listening is very, very important. And as I joined this university, when I came here with a lot of passion and idealism, I still have. And I came and saw the land, barren land full of stray cattle and abandoned houses which were like haunted houses also. I thought it's so easy to build new houses, but to commission old houses which have been abandoned. My heart sank, but my spirit did not. And today when I really stepped into the office of the HOD, Odia, I was reminded of the slogan of the Onida television. And those of you who are older will remember, neighbor's envy, owner's pride. So, Niranjan, Nirjarini, I am envious of you. I didn't have this kind of office as a Vice Chancellor. But I'm so happy for you. You have a lovely, office as a Vice Chancellor. And today we have so many buildings also. And you said, one day we will also become like JNU and my, alma mater, University of Hyderabad. You have become University of Hyderabad, Niranjan. You have become JNU. Because in many places, we don't see this kind of an aesthetically pleasing ambience that I'm seeing. So aesthetic life, as Tagore taught us, and Mother Mira Alfasa taught us, are so integral, especially to the English department. To have a good, pleasant interior is also very important, to be smartly dressed, to be articulate, and to have a sense of humor, and to be suave. That is something that I learned from my professors like Shivke Kumar, Meena Alexander, Arvind Kishan Mehrotra. I thought I have done the right thing to join the English department because the smartest people, the most handsome professors on campus were the English professors. The best dressed women were the English professors. So we learned that. And I think, and used to say, on campus also, in Hyderabad University, you can spot them from a distance. They're from the English background, And today we say POCO, post-colonial also. So everything else remaining same. It's important to be well-dressed. It's important to be suave. It's important to be articulate. It's important to believe in a culture of dialogue. That's what English studies stand for. We are also to learn from the others. I'm not denying them, but we are here we have to put the best foot forward also in order to do something else. 3 more remarks before I get into the, my keynote. The next is, Joseph Conrad. There are 2, I would like to invoke 2 powerful statements from English fiction in the 20th century. And both the remarks, may I say, are extremely pertinent to the objective of the seminar. The first is, of course, Joseph Conrad. And you would all recall the debate between Chinua Achebe and Joseph Conrad, and defenders of Joseph Conrad and Chinua Achebe about colonialism and post-colonialism. And what you find in Joseph Conrad, the most dominant cry in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Look at darkness of Africa, for example. If you have read Phantom Comics the Ghost Who Walks, and it's Denkali. What is Denkali? It is Africa. And if you think of Tarzan of the Apes, me Tarzan, you Jane, for example. Tarzan of the Apes, the ship is wrecked off the coast of Africa. The tribals. And Joseph Conrad says, and one of the most powerful and haunting kind of messages of Heart of Darkness is exterminate the brutes. Exterminate the brutes, which symbolizes the powerful, Western supremacistic, racial supremacistic kind of a dialogue that Professor Basha was telling us. Britannica rules the waves, and the civilizing mission of the West, for example. And again it is echoed in the words of Joseph Conrad. And Conrad was a Polish man, and he said, exterminate the brutes. Who is it who is going to exterminate the brutes? The whites. And who are the savages? And so Ramchandra Guha has written this account. It's a kind of a tribute he is making, but that tribute is also partly flawed, because you also reveal, you also see the kind of feet of clay that very Welbin had, the kind of a relationship that he had on account of the participant observer technique that he was. And for him, the fodder were all the innocent tribals of Madhya Pradesh, for example. Koshi, whom he married and who him abandoned, in a kind of a ex-party divorce. And then, of course, Leela, whom he married, and he fathered 3 children. And when Leela was expecting his child, Very Elvin was seriously thinking of marrying and having a kind of a alliance with an American woman. Can you imagine? Colonial anthropology was not dead, even in post-independence India. And he became an ambassador of Jawaharlal Nehru in the Northeast. So while he's done so much for the interest of the tribal people, but you also see that he has had feet of clay, very relevant. So that's something that we have to also recognize, that is the first major statement that I would like to make before you. The second, which is also, echoed before around the time of World War II, that's equally important. Another important kind of a novelist is Eric Blair. And 3 guesses, you get imaginary, eclairs from me, if you can guess. Eric Blair, whose name was George Orwell. And George Orwell's important and post-colonial kind of a novel, which has not received its due, is called Burmese Days. And one of the powerful messages of Florey in Burmese Days is something which really mirrors the statement of Conrad. And he says, shoot the bastards. Who are it? Who are the bastards? We are the bastards. The colonial subjects are the bastards. And the racially subordinate classes and of course, the tribals are the bastards. Exterminate the brutes and shoot the bastards. That has been the dominant. And it is such a travesty that in cultural imperialism of the kind that we are witnessing today, we are still following the Western footsteps, the metropolitan West, which is still dictating terms to us. I think that is the most important message that I would like to give you. That new imperialism, which is really before us, and the way the American imperialism and other imperialism are dictating our own terms also. So we have to think of global capitalism and imperialism of the kind in order to do justice to our own tribal habitat itself. So let this be a kind of a prefatory remark for me. Let this be a prelude to me. And then thank you so much, Nirjarani and others. In your own generosity, you have given me 40 minutes of your time, and every minute counts. And let me be very conscious of the time that you have. And although I am a experienced classroom teacher, on occasions like this, I would not like to trust my memory, my ingenuity. Let me trust the written text, because that is very, very important. If you stick to text, you will not exceed to time. So let me remind myself of the 11th commandment. And the 11th commandment, my dear friends, is that thou shalt not exceed the time limit given to you. How is that? You're all ready? Ready? Okay. Give me a little bit morsel of water. We're doing fine. Arjuna, we've forgotten everything else. You're just looking, at the revolving fish, because out there is the hand of Draupadi. And none of the 5 Pandavas succeeded. Only Arjuna did, because he had the power of accuracy. And therefore he was chosen by Krishna, as so that he could be given because of his power of communication, concentration. So we need to concentrate. And I think it is important for the teacher and the speaker also to create a kind of a spell so that everybody can listen. And my predecessors, in their own way, magical way, have created a spell. And if that is not there, the purpose of the seminar is lost. So I told myself, let me not be a second-rate, ethnographer. Let me not be a second-rate, third-rate anthropologist. Let me be true to my own Swadharma. Gita says, Swadharme nidhanam shreya, paradharma vayabhaya. I'm a literary critic, literary practitioner. I'm a translation practice. Push it beyond comparative literature. Push it still beyond cultural studies. But not yet. an anthropologist, not yet an ethnographer. So let me really stick to Swadharma and then talk to you about really what kind of an illumination that we can have when we deal with issues of, tribal culture, literature and culture. So let me begin with what I have in mind. And all my other friends also who have come and who knew me, and my message has been very clear. Let me not rule with violence, with intimidation, with coercion. Let me rule with love. I think my message as a Vice Chancellor has been to rule with firmness, but with love. So, and my message as a teacher, as a institution builder at Hyderabad University, everywhere else, be an example, set an example, and trust the intelligence of the people whom you are trying to govern. And I'm sure they will fall in line. But no threat, no fear will ever really work in our democratic order, especially with the generation next that is here with us. They're judging us not in terms of the authority figure that we have, not in terms of the position that we have, but the way we can establish camaraderie with them. So with these words, I hope I have hooked you to my own talk itself, which I'm going to give you right now. So we have heard about this interdisciplinarity. May I say that in the recent decades, there have been intersectionality, fruitful, benevolent manner between the social sciences and the liberal arts. The humanities and the social sciences have fruitfully come together. And I think what we're going to witness today is a result of that kind of intersectionality between the liberal arts and the humanities. And so the topic that I have chosen for myself is translating tribal literature, culture, ideology, and translating practice. So I said, Kishore, in your absence, that let me not be a second-rate anthropologist and ethnographer. Let me be true to my Swadharma, because Swadharma nidharma sheya, paradharma bhaya bhaya. So I think you stretch yourself, yes, comparative literature, yes, cultural studies, but not Malinowski, not Margaret Mead. I have read them, not in detail itself. So I cannot try to be yourself. I can be true. But you have really come so many steps forward. And Damayanti Madam also, both in your own ways, you have, given such kind of a credit and tribute to poetry, the power of poetry that Shiv Vishwanathan and others have given. And I'm so happy for that, because if the world will triumph, it will be triumph on the power of poetry. Plato believed in poetry. And guess what happened to him? He was banished from his ideal republic. So we must really assert the power and the supremacy of poetry itself. And it's not accidental. My late mother was a poet, Vidut Prabhadevi, and we are witnessing her centenary. E.M. Forster said, only connect. If we can only connect the disparate kind of narratives out there, our purpose as a classroom teacher and student will be greatly fulfilled. I think I would like to invoke two important kind of, dictums of Lawrence Vinuti, on translation. And translators' invisibility. And somebody would say, translators' invisibility? We can talk about visibility of the university, for example, through peer-reviewed publication. What on earth is translators' invisibility? And I think the underlying message is that the translator needs to be visible. How on earth is the translator going to be visible? Listen to what I have to really say here itself. Now, there are two ideas that Lawrence Vinuti is really proposing before us. One is the notion of domestication, and the third is the foreignization. Domestication briefly means, importing alien ideas and expressions, for example, metaphors to your own media. Anybody who is a practitioner of translation, there are some guys who say, what on earth do you have to know about, translation theory? I mean, do you need the theory of running 100 meters dash, 400 meters hurdle? You don't need. I am an athlete myself. Whoever taught us? But, T.S. Eliot, of course, said that criticism is as inevitable as breathing. And today we might really stretch it one step forward and say that, translation is as inevitable as our own life itself. explaining and understanding translation in a very broad and vast manner. Translation encompasses the entire realm of our life and existence itself. It is in that sense we talk. But here, of course, specifically, we have particular thing in mind. We have L1 and L2. The native tongue, the source language, and the target language. If you are really sticking, if you think of a kind of a spectrum out here, on the left-hand side is the source language, on the right-hand side is the target language. And what the translator does, ideally, is to bridge this kind of a gap. If you swing to one extreme, of course, and to the other extreme, you lose what is important. And I think bright students out here would really jot down what I'm saying. Because they are really new, they're straight from Oven. I'm not really rehashing what I have done. I've really written something for you. So the main problem in this kind of a process, if you really stretch it beyond a point, is you lose what is called intelligibility. Intelligibility. If you go to the one extreme on the right, you no longer have a translation. You have what Pilal called transcreation. And I will very soon come to the whole problem of translating a tribal text. So I think we have to know that, yes, some people who say that, I don't believe in translation theory. I believe in translation practice. I believe as a translation practitioner, I got the Katha Award from the President of India, that translation theory is very important. You may not really think of theory in a scholastic manner. Jacques Derrida, Paul Diman, and others. But certainly your own act of translation has to be deeply informed by your knowledge of translation theory, of Lawrence Venuti, Susan Bassnett, Harish Trivedi, and Rumila Thapar, may I say, the eminent historian. And her work of the translation of the Shakuntala Kavya, she is showing that all acts of translation, the next point I am making. And students are very fond of taking points, because points are extremely handy at the time of the examination. Number 3 point, all acts of translations are acts of cultural and ideological negotiation. How about that? 3rd point, very impressive, cryptic but very impressive. I'm not saying this. And Susan Bassnett of Warwick University, whom I met, she said that. And Rumila Thapar, the hard-boiled historian, is saying that. And also, Harish Trivedi, the doyen of literary studies in India, and Meenakshi Mukherjee, they are also saying the same thing itself. So I'm a believer in that kind of an approach, all acts of translation. And we will see very soon, in 15 minutes flat, when I come to the whole business of tribal texts, how that is also relevant. That you cannot think of a transference in terms of vocabulary, in terms of lexicon, in terms of wordplay. It's not that. It is a business of dealing with all the texts, subtexts, etc. The matrix, the milieu, the context of the tribal experience that Damayanti Madam was telling us about. And how poorly equipped we are, Damayanti. We are hopelessly, we are grossly ill-equipped to deal with the terrible experience. You have said what you have said, and Kishore Bashaji has said what he has said, but I am echoing from my own point of view as a translation theorist and a practitioner, that you will do ill justice to the tribal text itself unless you are really equipped, unpack yourself unlearn yourself from that you have learned, and then you also sort of, in a complete pristine, if there is something called a pristine manner, like a tabula rasa. You just clean yourself as a slate and you enter into the tribal land itself. Unlearn yourself about the marital practices. Unlearn yourself of the live-in practices. But you enter. And then, of course, the girl is, of course, not a commodity, a sex object created by global capitalism, but a flower. I think there's a huge difference between global capitalism's notion of womanhood and commodity formation and the flower emblem of the tribal culture. I think it's a whole world apart. I think it's time we will learn ourselves from the kind of fetishes and emblems that have been given to us. Uncritically, we have internalized this, and we enter, as I said it, like a tabula rasa, clean slate, into the tribal world itself. Another thing that we have to say, another point that I want to make, is that George Steiner, the eminent philosopher of the 20th century. And he wrote this book called After Babel. He said, can there be a kind of a speech after extermination, after the Holocaust? And George Steiner said there cannot be any speech, because after this kind of a meaningless violence and gas chambers of Auschwitz and Buchenwald, and we went to, my wife and we went to Poland, Warsaw. That's where some of the concentration camps existed. And George Steiner said, can there be a speech? Can there be poetry? Can there be articulation? And he said there cannot be articulation. But George Steiner had also said something very, very important. He said the entire 2000 kind of years, translation has been caught in terms of the two poles. One is fidelity and betrayal. And he says, you can't be beautiful and faithful at the same time. And of course, this is a kind of an imported idea from patriarchy. When you talk about faithful and beautiful, we're talking about Helen of Troy, and wars have been fought, because of Draupadi and Helen of Troy. But again, from the patriarchal lens, narratives and epics have been written, and how thoughtlessly, undiscerningly, it has been imported to the realm of translation. And those theorists who say that you can't be a faithful translator if you are a beautiful translator. But I would say you can be faithful. You can be, beautiful at the same time. There is no necessary conflict between faithful and beautiful. So he said fidelity and betrayal. Are you faithful to the original, or are you betraying the original? And the answer in the post-colonial, postmodern context is very simple. There is nothing like the authentic kind of a source. There is nothing like the authentic, standard language. A standard language is nothing but a dialect which is backed by a navy and an army, by the state. If the state backs a kind of a particular variety of language, a dialect, and every 10 yards we have a kind of a language. It's not a dialect. In our own undiscerning arrogance, we describe a language as a dialect. And we think of the dialect, the standard language, and the idiolect. Idiolect is nothing but the typical quintessential language of a particular person itself. So it's time to give up this whole idea of the dialects and to celebrate all the languages, going beyond the 22 languages which have been listed under the charter in the constitution itself, and how rich we are. And I went to Sri Lanka, and I went to Colombo, and then I said, you are fighting a war. You're fighting a war for two languages, Sinhala and, Tamil. And I just brought it out dramatically, my note. And I said, look at the number of languages which are listed here. So when we are really celebrating tribal culture, we are celebrating indeed the diversity of our own languages. And Damayanti J said that I'm talking about the Santila language and culture. But there are other things also which I don't know. And I got that idea from you, Damayanti Ji, that you were saying, I know this, but I don't know others. And that is the beginning of wisdom itself. And one of the motives that I have always cherished is always good to be Socrates dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. You can, when you are a pig dissatisfied, that is the beginning of emancipation, of learning itself. How many ideas are coming to me intuitively? How many unprepared things? And how they're falling into place when we are talking about tribal language and tribal culture. Susan Bassnett, Harish Trivedi, then of course, and others also were there. And we are very soon, we are going to get into the real crux of it. And how many things we are to know in order to be a translation theorist and a translator in practice. Are you with me? Jor se bolo? Yes. Okay, we are succeeding in our own mission itself. Now, the translation, and I will really extend this whole argument to the realm of tribal culture. And you will see how true I am when I'm talking about the tribal culture. Our own translation activity has been also deeply affected and marred by two things which are happening. Because all our own, by the way, let me tell you about some kind of a revealing statistics that I'm going to tell you. If you look at the translation scene in Europe, you will be really horrified. You will be horrified. And why? Because 3.2% of the publications in Europe happen to be translators. And we think that translation is always there. Rupa Publications, then HarperCollins is there. And then, of course, our own brand of the Sahitya Academy also, all the translators. And then I happen to be the advisor and contributing editors of Muse India. And we have just got the shortlisting of 8 works in the translation itself. And Sahitya Academy gives awards in translation in 22 languages. You might be thinking that translation is active and kicking, but not quite. 3.2% of the publications in the advanced West happen to be translated. So how poorly equipped we are. We don't have translators, 3.2. And we have such a notion of glamour around translation to say that, this person is getting this award, that award, etc. But 3.2. And you can see how miserably equipped we are. And we're talking about unity and diversity. One of the main ways by which the Indian state has celebrated the great diversity of our country, because India is a quasi-federal state. It is not a unitary state. It's through the act of translation. Sahitya Academy's motto, the House of Letters motto is that India speaks in many languages, but India is one. How are we going to have diversity and oneness, unity in diversity? And one of the primary ways post-independence India has thought of unity in our country through the translation projects of the Central Institute of Indian Languages in Mysore, or the translation projects and enterprises in very part of the country, including Sahitya Academy itself. But I've just told you how poorly equipped we are. And we're talking about a translator, not somebody who's just transferring meaning from source language to target language. I will give you the 5th important point out here, because every translator is an interpreter of our culture. He's an interlocutor, like an anthropologist like Barry Relvin and Chitakan Mahapatra. A translator is also, and when I'm not imposing this kind of a mission on him. This mission is ingrained in the translator's activity itself. Because the translator is mediating, he's a bridge, he or she is a bridge between 2 cultures through languages. When a language dies, my friend, a whole culture dies. Today, various parts, the so-called arrival, Columbus's landfall, he came in Pinta Nina, Santa Maria, and he was an Italian, he was sponsored travel by the Spanish. Ferdinand and Isabella, he landed there without a navy and an army. The courtesan Pizarro were to follow, but he didn't have any army. But he had the powerful tool of naming and the politics of naming. He succeeded. Today in Central America, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and South America, Peru, and of course Venezuela, which was very much in news, Caracas, and also Argentina, Buenos Aires. All the names are unfortunately Spanish names. And Brazil is one country which has Portuguese names. What happened to the life of the indigenous? What happened to the life of the tribals? In Australia, when my wife and we went to Sydney, what happened? In New Zealand, habited by the British, for example, and the lives of those people. So when we are really heralding and the chronicle of tribal experience in India, we must simultaneously herald and celebrate the lives of the tribals in Asia-Pacific region, in North America and Canada, but also in South America and Central America. A whole set of people, after Columbus's night, landfall in the new land, El Salvador, San Salvador, and Nicaragua, of course, and Honduras, all the names are Spanish. They're very beautiful. I'm a lover of Rene Iglesias. I love that music because that's also Mediterranean and Spanish music. But we must not be unmindful of the kind of legacy of colonialism. And this colonialism, one of the worst things that has happened, is a decimation of the languages and cultures of the world. Today, as we are sitting, the languages with the Jarawa type, if you go, and that has become a kind of a destination for the Indian middle class people to go to, Port Blair. But Port Blair has got Jarawa languages, and as we are speaking, there are at least 3 or 4 people present there. And my friend Anvita Abhi, who is a linguist of Jawaharlal Nehru University, has done work on the languages of the Jarawa. These are all tribals, of course, and it is the so-called advanced West that Kishore Bashaji was telling us about. In our own racial arrogance and supremacy, coupled and aided by global capitalism, we have really, involved in this kind of a in this whole business of massacre, physical massacre, and the dissemination of languages. So as you sit here, as I said, medium is the message. Look around you. There are, of course, the tribe, Gadaba, Bonda, and all the tribes here. How blessed you are to be in a kind of a land, a matrix, which is full of the life of the tribals of Koraput. And of course, we heard the voices from Mayurubhanj, etc. Aren't we ecstatic? We are ecstatic because it's an opportunity to learn and to unlearn ourselves of the kind of a capitalistic education we have got, and the English education of those who claim that we are here to civilize the non-West. Let me now tell you about the text that I have in mind. If I can succeed in that mission, I would have succeeded in the whole business of the talk that I am supposed to give to you. I have a printed text. Americans don't take you very seriously unless you have a printed text. So I have done my homework. I'm not speaking out of tabula rasa, my friend. Let me go. So I have assimilated. And I am not an internet intellectual. I'm not part of the Wikipedia. I'm not any Wikipedia intellectual. Some people say that there is an epitaph of the teacher itself because there's a new kind of a smart classroom. I beg to differ. I think the teacher has to be reborn and reinvent himself and herself in order to be meaningful and relevant in the classroom itself. And I think in a modest manner, I'm playing this kind of a role. What is it that I have in mind? What I have in mind is a tribal text by Gopinath Mohanty. You know Gopinath Mohanty? And I met him in San Jose in America when I was on a Fulbright. And I said, thank you so much for writing. Because, his daughter Jayantika was my sister's classmate, Minati, my Upa. So I said, he said to me before he passed away, 1990 I met him. 1991 he was no longer. And he said, who taught me, who was responsible for my travel writing? I said, who? I said, my mother, because we used to visit. He said, no, your grandfather. Your grandfather, N.C. Das, said that I was in two minds. I was offered the Odisha Administrative Service. He said, no, you join the service, it will take you to places. And he took me to Koraput. Had I not really heeded your grandfather's advice, I wouldn't have come to Koraput. I wouldn't have seen the life of all these Bondas and others. And I wouldn't have written Amrutara Santana and Paraja. And today I'm going to talk about Shikar. You remember Conrad's Heart of Darkness? The fire is lit there in that corner. And there is a narrator like a Sutradhar. And he's telling us about Marlowe. And then very soon we will hear about Exterminate the Brutes. I'm telling you about this Shikar itself. So you can't really think of Shikar as a writer, the Gyanpith Award winner of Paraja and Amrita Santan, without bringing in this kind of a modest, personal note from my own archives itself, personal archive itself. And, and Kishore Bashaji was telling us, scripting your own biography, autobiography. Autobiography is scripting the narrative itself. That's very, very important. And Anthony Eden, the sociologist, also is telling us about that. How would you translate? What are the issues that I had when I had to really deal with this? 1992, I began, my colleague Sudhakar Marathe and myself, we began. Can I have a morsel of water if you don't mind? This is not a kind of a male patriarchy which is voicing. This is a kind of a helpful gesture from your side, So that, the whole idea is that I don't lose the momentum. It's not patriarchy which is speaking. It is just a helpful, humanist gesture. Please forgive me. It's a humanist gesture. Thank you. Thank you. Some radical feminists would say, why the hell doesn't he help himself? She just happens to be here. It could be my friend, Anjana Elu from Hyderabad University. How hilarious it is. Because today we can't even speak on anything without being politically correct. Thank you, Nijarini. You are mercifully free from this kind of a shibboleth. I do believe in the woman's cause, but I believe in the cause of the humanism also. We need to go beyond these boundaries, but we have to recognize, of course. But let me come back very quickly to this. I've had a little bit of a water, let me come back. So this tribal narrative, Shikar. Should the translator be visible? Should the translator be invisible in the tribal text? That's the kind of a question that is before us. 1992, I was not so conversant. And we did the translation. And if you look at Shikar, Katha Prize Stories 2, which fetched us the best award, and subsequently also Katha Prize Stories 4, in Shapya, Pratibha Rai got the award. So I think I know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the issues of translation and how translation is also having an interface, intersectionalities with anthropology, sociology, and other disciplines also. So I think we need to really read about Very Relvin and others also, a whole list of anthropological work on tribal studies. I read them, we need to really read. You can't just be reading, sitting at home and saying source language and triggered language and the translation is there. It's not so simple. It's a damn difficult kind of an enterprise. It is much easier to write a kind of original stuff than to do some translation. Some people say, those who can, they become actors, they succeed, they can. Those who cannot in life, those who profess, those who can, they profess. Those who cannot become professors. So action and professing. So those are, those who cannot, they become professors also. Those who can, they become actors, for example. So I'm saying translation of any kind, and particularly those so-called alien kind of a text, which is alien to us. And we think that we know everything. Because you see, if you have a lonely planet on one hand, we have a right hand, we have a bottle in hand. Oh, you know what? I've done, Barcelona. I've done New York. I've done this. What is this doing this? Visiting places. You have all these kinds of companies which are sponsoring. But is that what visiting places is? You have to know about Pico Iyer. You have to know about D.H. Lawrence. At Twilight in Italy, Sea and Sardinia, Etruscan places, and Mornings in Mexico. Look, Eureka, 4 texts I have got. Is it like doing Sea and Sardinia? Is it like doing Rome, for example? It's not like doing Rome, doing this and doing that. Again, multinational capitalism of the tourism kind is dictating these things to us. In one part of America, close to California, there is a board there. What the hell are you doing? Bahamas is 500 kilometers away from you. The answer is pack the bag and go to Bahamas and kill yourself. Another message is saying, publish and perish. We have to publish and perish at the same time. Not publish or perish. Publish and perish. So capitalism is everywhere, including in the classroom also, in the publishing industry. So I'm saying that this is so very important for you to know. The practitioner has to really know about translation. And I gave you a whole gamut of the disciplines that you have to know. So one of the things that is really, you have to be part of the global literary grid. One fine morning, one literary agent called Pankaj Mishra, he was taking a kind of a train ride from Delhi, Superfast Express, to Dehradun. He got hold of a text of Arundhati Roy, stopped on the way and came back to Delhi. I must publish this. Because he was thinking of a global literary grid, Pankaj Mishra. And he had to be packaged and sold, the God of Small Things. You have to be part of the global literary grid. And just guess how global literary grid is breathing down on our own neck itself. It's good for Arundhati Roy, because she became a kind of a celebrity with one novel, God of Small Things. The rest, of course, are an anticlimax, as you know. She has tried many, but there can be only one kind of a prototype. The rest are all caricatures. You have heard of Golden Goldfried, for example, Catcher in the Rye. Catcher in the Rye, which is a spoof on Charles Dickens, for example. But a single author, for example, celebrity, Arundhati Roy. But who made him a celebrity? Part of the global literary capitalism, print capitalism, of whose representative was Pankaj Mishra also. And he's written many travel books also. And Butter Chicken in Ludhiana is one of them. How many things are there at the back of the mind? And how I have to really tumble out in the course of a lecture through this kind of E.M. Foster's slogan, only connect. Pankaj Mishra, who is a writer, good writer in himself, but he is also part of the global literary grid. Is translation activity, including translation of the text that we have, tribal text, is it also part of the global literary grid? Yes. We discovered to our own great consternation that it is. Because we I was not so well read. Part of the reason of coming to Koraput is to learn, and to learn myself about the tribal culture itself. But sadly, I do not have enough knowledge about this. But I read, and then 2 or 3 things that we found, that it is part of the global literary grid. Because, we thought that we have to really efface ourselves. We have to be invisible. Because our parents said, don't talk about yourself. My father said, don't bother about yourself. Wait for other people to ask you who you are. And that was a sign of modesty of the middle class kind. But I think what we are hearing in the case of the translation is that you don't have to be modest. You don't have to efface yourself. The visibility of the translator that Lawrence Vinuti is talking about. In the first paragraph, I had mentioned about that. Do you recall what I said? Visibility of the translators. Translators' visibility. What really happens when the translator is invisible? We thought, my co-translator thought we should be invisible. Let the translator speak, translation speak. Because, I'm an authority on D.H. Lawrence, and Lawrence once memorably said, never trust the artist, trust the tale. He said, never trust the artist, trust the tale. Not the biographical statement, not the autobiographical statement of a writer, but the text itself. And that is the hallmark of what was called formalism and new criticism. And today we have gone beyond formalism, new criticism, to neo-historicism and post-structuralism itself. So in the era of post-structuralism, silence is not a virtue. Just as in the case of, feminism, silence is not a virtue. Today, nobody will say, if I say, "Main chup rahungi," with that kind of a cloth draped around myself, and that veil, "Main chup rahungi" of Meena Kumari, today's generation of girls will say, "Give me a break. Main chup nahi rahungi. Main baat karungi. And if you don't cooperate with me, get lost." And so be it, because I think that is very important. Patriarchy is telling us this, and silence is not necessarily a virtue. My friends, just like patriarchy, silence is not a virtue for the translators. And we learn to our own kind of a discomfort how silence is not to be. So we effaced ourselves, we wrote about, we didn't have the arrogance that we knew about the translators, the tribal text. Maybe Gopinath Mohanty. So in Platonic terms, we were twice removed from the reality of the globe, the tribal reality of Koraput that he was talking about. There are 2 children, Meena and Kuna and Mini. And they are there and Sri Charan is an administrator. They're going in the jeep. And then, of course, throughout the time, hunt the tiger, hunt the tiger. So tiger has become, in Gopinath Mohanty's hands, not only a kind of a symbol of hunting the tiger, tiger is a victim, but through the hunting image of the symbol of the tiger, he is thinking of the universal narrative of exploitation and tyranny. What a powerful way of really dwelling it. He's thinking of the children, American children fighting thoughtlessly in the fields of Vietnam itself. And if you look at that epiphonic kind of the photograph which was there, and the bombing of a child, Vietnam, for example, which was there in Life magazine, and that marked the ending of the Vietnam War because Americans refused to really take part in Vietnam War. But there are certain photographs, the My Lai massacre, and the child, the napalm, The napalm is, if a napalm bomb is really dropped, as the Americans did, it is more ferocious than, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 10 kilometers radius, everything, not a grass will stand, napalm. Because everything is really burnt, can you imagine? And there is a photograph of a small Vietnam child in Saigon, where there is a napalm bomb, and she's whole, skin is burning itself, she's running for her life. And so it is said, napalm child. She went to America, and that became a powerful metaphor against American war and American imperialism. We have nothing against American people. I am a recipient of the Fulbright Scholarship. We were talking about imperialism of the different kind. And one of the results of imperialism has been the decimation of the tribal languages and culture. So we have to recognize this factor itself. So where is the question of visibility and invisibility? We thought that we will invisible. But unknown to us, we were caught in what is called the global literary guild. Because the editor of Katha Prize Stories, Geeta Dharmarajan, said, the ending of the story is very powerful. If you look at Gopinath Mohanty's stories like Danapani, etc., he is deploying one kind of a narrative style. And that narrative style is a realistic narrative style. Realistic narrative style. But when he is really dealing with the tribal experience, he is dealing with a different kind of a narrative style. And that narrative style is very much visible and manifest in the work called Shikar. So Shikar is a long, tale. And Shikar is a novella. We call itself, a long tale is called a novella. And Shikar is a long tale, is a novella. And he is dealing with a new, definitely kind of new narrative style. So should a writer really capture, in order to capture the spirit of the landscape? D.H. Lawrence had talked about spirit of the place. And I think a good writer knows how to capture the spirit of the place itself. R.K. Narayan certainly did in Malgudi. And then, of course, others also, the great writers, 19th century writers, Émile Zola and Tolstoy also knew how to capture the spirit of the place. And he certainly did. And he used one style, and which is really very close to magic realism. You know magic realism? Like if you say Indira Gandhi, Kasturba, Porbandar. So magic realism, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He uses magic realism very effectively. And what happens is that the tiger is shot. It's so engrossing for you because you have to be excited as a speaker to know what you are saying, and the audience can be excited. And if you are bored yourself with what you are saying, and this excitement comes every day with the discovery of new ideas, insights in the process of speaking itself. It's not really ready-made stuff. It's all coming, as it will, from the crucible of your memory and with the power of imagination and critical intelligence. So what you find here is that, the tiger is shot. And I'll read out the passage also before I begin. 10 minutes flat, I'll end. I promised you 40 minutes, and I'll take 40 minutes, I'll end. And if Nijjarani, and please pardon me for not addressing you, Dr. Nijjarani Tripathi, HOD English, Central University, Nijjarani for me, more endearingly. So if Nijjarani allows, I open myself to ask any question. It's not a prepared speech. Agreed? Yes? So we have come to the eureka moment here itself. What happens is the tiger is shot. And Kuna and Minnie, hello, tiger is shot. And then, of course, then what happens? And then, of course, he saw that Gopinath Mohanty is saying, there was a trickle of blood. And that blood becomes a kind of a stream. And the stream becomes a river. It went over the bonnet of the jeep. And it meandered through the forest. And then, of course, it swelled in a serpentine manner. Do you find that in a realistic manner, the trickle can become a stream and the stream can become a river? He's talking about that. And side by side, he's talking about the rebellion of the, we have heard about Birsa Munda. And sitting here, we cannot really forget the sacrifice of Lakshman Naik also, Shahid Lakshman Naik. He's talking about this kind of uprising. This subaltern uprising which has not been recorded in history, because that is a part of the peasant memory itself. That is part of the tribal memory. The exploitation of the Sahukars, the exploitation of the British. the exploitation of the landowners, the sexual exploitation of the tribal women also. There's a whole range of exploitation he's talking about. Nor is he confining himself to the exploitation in the Dandakari region. He's talking about the exploitation of the poor Vietnam by Americans, for example. He's talking about global capitalism and new imperialism also. I think he's a fantastic narrator because the local and the global are coming together. He's thinking globally but acting locally also, proving the truth and the validity of a remark which we use undiscerningly in a meaningless mechanical manner. The local and the global are coming together. He's so attuned to the nuances and the spirit of the local habitat itself. When he's talking about the Kondhas and the native, he calls them Amrita Rasantana, the children of immortality and the nectar. But he's thinking of Vietnam. He's thinking about global capitalism and imperialism. And so he's bringing together. And therefore he is using, is he importing? Of course he might have read, but he is not really imitating Gabriel Garcia Marquez, 100 Years of Solitude. And he wrote powerfully against, of course, this whole Columbus's Nightfall. You can't talk about the identity of the South Americans and the Central Americans like Nicaragua and Honduras and, of course, others also that are very much in news without talking about the so-called exploitation. We can't talk about the exploitation of the West only through Sir Thomas Roe, but also the landing of Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama's coming to Kerala has also brought great deal of spoliation and exploitation of different kind. It's not it's not a triumphal kind of a victory. It is a sad story of exploitation. As Stephen Greenblatt, the new historicist, is telling us wisely about this. The history of exploitation, the history of appropriation, and the whole business of politics of naming which is going on. And the whole business of naming is also, behind the desire for naming, is a desire for exploitation and commercial and cultural and linguistic exploitation of a different kind, beginning with Sir Jones, William Jones and the rest, for example. You guys don't have any history. You guys don't have any jurisprudence. You don't have no architecture. We don't have any psychoanalysis. We have come to tell you about that. Through the trafficking of the intellectuals across the globe itself, through Ford Foundation and through other bodies also, which continues in 20th century India. Happily, this is being increasingly given up. So there are lessons here for the tribal experience. And one of the powerful ways by which this is being explored through the business of translation theory. So this whole question of, the post-colonial invocation of Gabriel Garcia Marquez in the context of, in the Shikar narrative, what happens to that? And we really translated that. Emti bohi gola, Bonatupurku gola, and Gita Dharmarajan, she is thinking of the global literary greed. She's like a literary agent out there. She has to promote the book. Katha Prize Stories too has to sell. And there, of course, our own experiment, because we are not in the business of selling. And if you give to Sahitya Academy, surely your approach will be respected. But the book will not sell. The book will remain in the go down, I'm so sorry, with all due respect to Sahitya Academy. They don't have good system of circulation and sell. So we had a choice. It was not a choice. It was a non-choice. Either you accept the decision of the editor, and of course you delete that kind of a paragraph. The flow of the blood going over the bonnet, and of course the children are clapping, and here is a story of a great sadness, of great tragedy. And I was telling you about the Holocaust. The Holocaust was committed by the Western nations by themselves. For what? Through the empire, division of the empire. So violence and war and empire have been the contribution of the West. And it is visited not only by the West, but there is a hierarchy of internal hierarchy within our own country also, because we are also involved in the exploitation of our own tribal land itself. For our own desire to have drinking water, bottled water. It doesn't matter to us what happens to the rest of the people, because for them, exterminate the brutes, shoot the bastards. We may not use this kind of a language. Post-colonial state has devised a different kind of an approach. But it is time, as Professor Basha said, no favor to them. It is indispensable for us. Let me finally read out the last paragraph to make my point, and then, of course, open myself. And going against the so-called protocol, what do we care about protocol? And Rekha says, Sare bandhan tod do. In the manner of learning, there should be no protocol. Teachers, students, scholars, everybody together. And I used to always say, whenever, somebody used to come to me, sir, you are a vice chancellor, and I can, please pardon me, I'm sorry if I said, no. You and I, all of us sat together. Professor Panda, I used to say, even as a UGC member right now, we will spend about 20 minutes. Either you convince me or I'll convince you. And in this business of learning, authority figures should not matter. Because somebody would say, I think I exceeded my brief. I shouldn't have really negated you. I said, it doesn't matter. Because I used to always bring bright minds. Because unless I bring bright minds, how can there be originality of thought? So wherever I was as a chairperson of the department or as a vice chancellor, I was always bringing. Because whole business of a university is learning. And the university stands for the universe. And if you can't really prove yourself, you have no business to be there. I think we are just basically an instrument for the dissemination of knowledge and learning. Let me quickly go to the last paragraph, okay, of this powerful one. That is there in the book itself. But this we will show, I'll show you, this is actually no match to the original that we have got in mind. And that paragraph is also very, very powerful. The hunting of this, and I can show you this paragraph, okay? The last paragraph, and then I will end. I hope I have not bored you. Have I? Okay, all right. So I'll just say you the last paragraph, and give me 1 minute, I'll discover that last paragraph. Yes, the last paragraph. The subtexts which are missing, the text which is there. There are many denizens in the forest, the saukar, the jungle, the rabbits. And as the torchlight of the jeep is going, is illuminating the scene, of course, hey, that's a tiger, Bago. No, it was a kind of a rabbit which went away, which goes away. You have to really be in the same, frame as the narrator himself and herself. So the narrative is really punctuated by multiple points of view. And that's the richness of Gopinath Mohanty's narrative. It's a non-realistic narrative. It is a narrative which really reminded me of magic realism of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Are we there, all of you? Okay? Yes? Okay. It's a tiger, said Lakshmi Narayana. The vehicle shot forward like a meteor. The creature stood erect, a striped animal. Not a tiger, but a hyena. Next came a big bear, its face turned downward. Kill him, they shouted. Kill him. The outcry for violence, the outcry for militarism, the outcry for the empire. Behind all search of empire, and the medium of establishing the empire, of course, is the settlement colonies, is the violence. And you can't have a kind of an imperial mission unless you succeed in subjugating the natives to think that they're all inferior to you. So we were taught by the British that we're all a bunch of idiots. You don't have any history. And Orwell said the best way of really denying, and to prove that, you are all inferior, is to deny the subject people of their own history itself. So history has been systematically removed and, decimated completely in Asia-Pacific region, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Canada, in South America, in Central America, and in India also, for example. So William Jones has to come, and many others also had to come to teach us about Upanishads, about law, because we guys had no law. We have nothing absolutely. We did not know about Shakuntala. Somebody has to come from the West to teach us. So turmeric has to be really imported, and somebody will get a patent. And through CNN and BBC, we'll learn the virtue of turmeric sitting in Koraput itself. How pathetic it is to see. As I'm saying, you are realizing the truth of what I'm saying. But we are wittingly or unwittingly have become implicated in the colonial mission of the West, of the earlier kind, and new imperialism of the American kind, which is going on. Killing. He says, kill him, kill him. So the tiger, which is a victim, because you are removing the tiger from its habitat. You are a bunch of intruders. You have no business to kill. But if you go to many places, the tiger skin, in the palace of Maharajas, it is considered as a kind of a trophy. The tiger becomes a kind of a trophy. The victim becomes a kind of a trophy in our own drawing room itself. Kill him. Those who watch violence and killings on the television at home or in the imagined pages of fiction, they would merely know the supremacy of brute force. Gopinath Mohanty is saying, the horror of the tragedy, such slaughter only feeds their egoism. They would not know how to fight and die an untimely death. The American schoolboy in the Asian battlefields, even this denizen of the forest, this tiny hair might perish, thought Sri Charan. How long would it be spared? Maybe a day would come when there would be no hairs left in the forest itself. Today there are no hairs left. There are no trees left. And therefore the justification of the title, Voices from the Hills. The hills are speaking to us. The hills are alive with the sound of music. And then the last part, which we could not get because it was on account of the global literary grid that it was removed. It was a sad day for us. But the choice was whether to get it published and not get it published. And we succumbed. We made a tame compromise. We regret we did that, but the book came out. But subsequently I've had occasion to write about it, and then of scripting my own kind of autobiography in a certain manner. The hills are alive with the sound of music. Thank you very much. If we can have just one or two questions. Very briefly. Yeah, one or two questions. Yes.
It's very charming that, sir, your voice is so charming. It's feel like I should listen to you the whole day. Anyway, sir, if we want to look at tribal community or tribal people, basically, sir, particularly in Indian context, they are living in the remote areas, forest areas, hill areas. So this is how they are carrying a sort of aesthetics test with their lives. Now, sir, through the lens of magic realism, for 1 minute, if we imagine that their lives are translated into city life. So in that case, do you think that after this, that will still continue the sort of aesthetics test? And sir, the second part of my question is, sir, if we want to hear their voice, and the question is, sir, how many people are hearing their voice? I believe that they can speak, but sir, I think their voice is not institutionalized. So sir, what is your opinion on this? Thank you, sir.
Very good question. And 5 imaginary eclairs to you. You know, Cadbury's eclairs. You just got 5 imaginary eclairs. Okay. The first question is that, how many people are hearing their voices? What should we do, for example? And thank you for your compliments regarding my so-called charming voice. As I said, we are in a business of, as I said, post-colonialism, so important. Particularly, and we just heard Professor Basha so eloquently really testifying to the importance of post-colonialism. I think post-colonialism is not an add-on. It is a vital way of really engaging with the world and with our own identity itself. Beginning with Edward Said and many others, and of course Gayatri Spivak, can the subaltern speak? Are we allowing the subaltern to speak, or are we masquerading as a kind of authority on their own life itself? I would say it's second. I think it's time to really listen to them and to silence ourselves. As my father said, just shut up and listen to more people, he said. Don't talk about yourself all the time. And you speak when you are asked to speak. And when you speak, you talk about the inadequacy of your own kind of a speech, and then the need for other voices also. How many years has it taken for Bidut Prabha to be heard? 100 years. How many years has it taken for Kuntala Kumari to be heard? And for Sarla Devi? And we don't care about our own tradition. And we have to remember about tradition and individual talent, T.S. Eliot said. Only with the knowledge of the tradition can we really think of the individual talent and originality. So my answer to you is that let us hear more of the voices, etc. To them, and let us hear more of Damayanti ji in various sections also. More such people should really come. We're so proud that Draupadi Murmu ji, Honorable President, is there. She is from, Mayurbhanj district. We're very proud. Such people should be there. And of course, post-colonialism, of course, new historicism, of course, the new things which are there, and also the good things of formalism, and which are also there. Because when the new comes, the old doesn't become necessarily outdated. The old remains and the new comes. That's what Homi Bhabha has in mind when he's talking about hybridity and liminality. So my answer will be hybridity and liminality, theoretical knowledge and the practical sense of the tribal experience. Both have to go together, side by side. And if we can do that, then I think we'll be on a learning course itself. It's a work in progress, my friend. We will never reach the target, and there is nothing like the authentic knowledge. Everything is very fragile and very fluid, and we have to always remember the ephemeral nature of the knowledge gathering, that we have to learn from various sources, and let many such multidisciplinary courses take place. And we have to learn from anthropology. I learned from anthropology. And Sri Vishwanathan and Ashish Nandi are favorite writers of mine. And his work, Science, Hegemony and Violence, I asked the biodiversity department once, they haven't read about Ashish Nandi's Science, Hegemony and Violence. I think every student of biodiversity and should read about Science, Hegemony and Violence, and Sri Vishwanathan's work also. And his dictum that we want to understand the angst of the post-colonial condition, you have to go beyond social sciences to the realm of literature and poetry itself. So I think here are various intersections of many disciplines. And today, Professor Bonda, I am happy to say, the new education policy that you have is talking about breaking down all the barriers. And how can we really break down barriers unless we read? If you read for the sake of passing the Union Public Service Commission, you will not really succeed. If you read just for the sake of reading. The other day, a girl from one of the colleges, Miranda House told me, "Sir, I liked what you said, aimless reading, and without any purpose, read without purpose, wandering." And we haven't really, wandering has not been Kartsiri. And, trespassing. Trespassing is not really. Because inside, if you see the entry of any university, you will see that, stop. Trespassing is prohibited. I think we should really allow people to wander and to learn. So I think I'm through with this answer. And if there's any other question, just one question, with your permission.
Yes, sir, sure.
Yeah, one question, because you are the Sutradhar here. I must not forget. Yes, very briefly.
Good noon. The first question is already answered by you, which is about the subalternity. After so many years of publication of Gayatri Chakravarti's works, Can the Subaltern Speak? I think the subalterns have not been able to speak. So when are they going to speak? One, which you have partly answered. The second one is related to the concept of standard language and the dialect. In linguistics, we do not discriminate between languages and dialects. And you rightly so pointed out that you see a language is a dialect with its army and navy. But politically, we have some distinctions which have been made by politicians. And ultimately, we linguists do not decide the policies. Politicians decide the policies. And they do make a difference between a language and dialect. So what is your opinion on the issue that has been lying for so long years, 50 years probably, between Sambalpuri and Oriya? The third one is related to post-colonialism where you see you discussed about the translation issues, and we have a sort of come to conclusion that this is the last one. So Chakraborty, Spivak has already discussed in the critique of the post-colonial region, where she discussed about the epistemic violence that has been wreaked upon the subalterns like us. Milomo has suggested one, framework, which is known as, epistemic disobedience that we need to make in order to counter the epistemic violence that has been wreaked by the... Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Very quickly, because it's a rapid fire answer to a fairly detailed question. First, when can the subaltern speak? Well, the subaltern will learn to speak when we folks make way for them. And more such people I have seen, like Professor Damayanti Madam and others are invited to our seminars and speak. We were in Sydney, my wife and I, we were in Sydney. And it was so pathetic. First, sort of de-enfranchise them, the Native Americans in Australia and Maoris in New Zealand. And then you bring them in a pathetic manner to inaugurate through some kind of a dance, Maori dance or Australian dance. I think it's a great shame and a travesty to make use of the natives in that manner. Think of all the Native Americans when I went there, into America, Pueblo Americans, Navajo Americans. They're all confined to the reservation. So I think more and more we have to hear their voices and give way for them. And I think we should really speak less and allow them to speak more. That is one practical answer. And yes, I'll come. Of course, it's a dialogue, and Professor Basha will answer. Second. The second question is that this question between politicians and the intelligentsia. The politicians and the intelligentsia. Now, I represent a kind of a University Grants Commission, which is under the Ministry of Education. And of course, there are our own ministers and others are also there. So the point is that I am not disrespectful of the policy of the government of the day, but I am appointed there as an independent mind. I must really give advice to people, let them decide what they want to do. But I think I would say if that sufficient amount of awareness is generated, we will also not land in a political problem between Sambalpur and the rest of Odisha. I think partly because of ignorance that these problems are created. If you have begin to learn and to respect all languages, all regions, and I'm all for Sambalpuri language, I'm all for Kosali language, and I think my answer, if you ask me, we should be able to live together, unity in diversity. We should really recognize the diversity of our languages and cultures. And if you do that, I would suggest many of our so-called political problems also will be relevant. And I think I will now request Professor Basha, who wanted to answer.
I'll just answer your question. Can the subaltern speak? See, the point is, I think, with due respect, I respect your point of view and this thing, but again, I include myself in your category as well, that despite all our sincere efforts to listen to the voices, because of our socialization, because the way we have been taught right from our school until the university, despite all our sincere efforts, we have not been able to shun our condescending attitude. Their voice was there, their voice is there, their voice will be there. The point is, what Professor Mahanti said, are we prepared to listen? Number one. Number two, they lack the institutional mechanism for their voice to be heard. They don't have access to a sort of world celebrity press, the publisher. They lack that. The point is, their strength is their orality. unless and until you give primacy to orality, oral traditions, and if you go on speaking on what is published and what is not published, then you can't read their voice.
Correct.
So the point is, my point, and I'm I speak with all conviction. I'm giving you this example I have given to n number of meetings. When I was a young lecturer, when I was coming with my students for field work, and we do field work in various tribal areas, we used to meet the school teacher, their school headmaster, and then we get connected with the villagers. And then we go on telling them, the way you are sending your children to the school, these boys and girls have come from university, which is a bigger school, and they will come, and they are coming, they will learn about your society, and they will write their examination. That's what we used to convince, and they used to help us. And the relationship becomes so intense. I have seen my boys and girls crying when they go from the fieldwork. This was happening in 1980s. 2010 to 2011 to 2018, 4-5 years, I was again coming for the field work. The same story, with a difference. They would listen. In the 80s, they would just listen and they will help us. But from 2011 onwards, the experience I had was they would listen. But at the end, they will put a question, which was not happening in 1980s. And what was that question? They said, Sir, ଆପଣ ଆସିଛନ୍ତି ଆପଣମାନଙ୍କ ପିଲାଙ୍କୁ ନେଇକିରି ସେମାନେ ପାଠ ପଢ଼ିବେ ପରୀକ୍ଷା ଦେବେ ସେମାନେ ସାର୍ ଭଲ ରହିବେ ଆମର କ'ଣ ହବ? Now you have to excavate that voice. You can't get that voice in an institutionalized mechanism. That is the failure. That is the failure of the academia. That is not their failure. That is the failure of the academia. And therefore I would say that if you are seriously interested into getting into their voice, you have to make an effort. You can't expect that they will come and speak to you. You have to go and do that kind of field work, and that's what I'm saying. Orality is their strength. Get into their orality. Then only you'll get their voice. Thank you.
So I think we are more or less through, and by common consent, I think we should stop. But I think there is nothing, I really fully commend my colleague, my dear friend, Professor Basha, for what he has said, emphatically. I'll just end with an anecdote. I think stories and anecdotes are very instructive. You see, near Hyderabad University, Central University, there is Gachibowli, where the Afro-Asian Games was held. And as it happens in the university students, somebody, dangled the offer of a T-shirt. If you go and do some duty, you'll get a T-shirt. And so that's a lure to involve, as volunteers. So some of our own students went and to the Balayugi Stadium, and they were there with thali and chandan and all that, and flowers. And as the delegates were coming, foreign delegates were coming, they were saying in a chorus, "Welcome to India, welcome to India, welcome to India," because they'll know they will get a T-shirt at the end of the day. And then, after 10 minutes, one batch came. They also said, "Welcome to India, welcome to India, welcome to India." Those people really gave a scowl. They were angry. He said, "Come on, we are from Mizoram, Nagaland." See, we guys, we can't even figure out who is a Mizo, who is a Naga, who is an Arunachal Pradesh person, Welcome to India. They would have said, "Give us a break, we are from Nagaland, Mizoram." So we know we can't distinguish. We think that they're all from Myanmar, from Korea, Thailand, because, they have those kinds of features. So I think, to echo what you were saying, I would say, physician, heal thyself. I think learning has to begin with all of us. I fully agree with what Professor Basha said. We have to make a beginning, and the beginning has to take place at home, and charity begins at home. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that profounding and intellectually stimulating keynote address. Your reflections have greatly enriched this session. May I now request our finance officer, Shri Duryodhan Sethi sir, to kindly address the gathering.
Good afternoon to everybody. I am very warm. Welcome to Central University of Odisha. I will take few minutes. I am feeling proud for this because this is an opportunity given my Vice Chancellor and my coordinator department, English department, to say few words. In this forum, already morning show the days. Three great personality with knowledgeable in their respective field. I must thank Professor Sachidan Mohanty, the poet of greats, son of a great poet, and he was our former VC of the university. I heartily welcomes your thoughtful lecture. Everybody listen very coolly. That is the very positive point, sir. I have seen many seminar conference. People, participants, students, they are listening each word very carefully, very coolly. It's a great achievement for our English department, taking the chief speaker, guest of honor, and Damayanti madam, who is very much brief about from starting up एक आदिवासी कैसे पैदा होता है, मरने तक जितना हिस्ट्री होता है उसको एक एक स्टेज में शादी तक बोले. उसमें ताड़ी हंडिया के बारे में भी आप सुने होंगे. कोरापुट डिस्ट्रिक्ट में कैसे नेगेटिव न्यूसेंस पैदा होता है, उनका प्रथा है, उनको पालन करना पड़ता है. उसको जो नहीं मानता वो सोसाइटी से अलग हो जाता है. और हमारा प्रोफेसर साहब पोंडा सर जो इतना नॉलेजिबल पर्सन है, इतना सारे संस्कृत में किताब लिखे हैं, वो चाहते हैं कि उनका जो विजन मिशन सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी कोरापुट के लिए जो रखा है हम लोग मॉनिटर करें डे टू डे. और हमारा एग्जिस्टेंस इसी वेस्टर्न उड़ीसा में है. हम लोग कुछ बेहतर करने के लिए चाह रहे हैं. हमारे जो मिशन विजन प्रोफेसर नरसिंह पंडा के द्वारा से हम उसको सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. वो इतना सिंपल आदमी है, इतना जेंटल है और इतना ऑनेस्टी भी है. मैं 6-7 महीना में मैं देख चुका है कि यूनिवर्सिटी आगे बढ़ाने में उनका जो कंट्रीब्यूशन चल रहा है. और डे टू डे मॉनिटरिंग इवैल्यूएशन में मैं हमारा VC सर को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूँ. और हमारे साथ जो किशोर कुमार भाषा साहब, इतना एक्सपर्ट नॉलेज है एंथ्रोपोलॉजी के बारे में. मैं तो नॉन टेक्निकल पर्सन हूँ, फाइनेंस हूँ. तभी मैं JNU में पढ़ाई किया था. हमारे जो सोशियोलॉजी एंथ्रोपोलॉजी का एक कोऑर्डिनेशन होता था, इसमें बड़ा प्रोफेसर होते सर. Romila Thapar, Y. Singh, T.K. Omini, M.N. Srinivasan, all the great persons, professors, India famous, world famous, they are staying. I stayed in JNU for 5 years. I was political science student. I know the culture of the Central University. When I feel anybody is coming from JNU, I become very much motivated that our university is so in that direction. Our professors sir, जो मैडम आए हैं और महंती सर आए हैं और बादशाह साहब आए हैं, मैं सबको यही करता हूँ कि आप हमारा सेमिनार में ज्वाइन किए. आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूँ. हमारे ये संस्था में सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी को हमको 2-4 साल में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में बहुत आगे बढ़ाएंगे. और जो हॉस्टल फैसिलिटी का कम है उसको भी हम गाइड करेंगे. और हमारा जो फैसिलिटी स्टूडेंट के लिए है हम लोग बेहतर करेंगे. आज एक अच्छा परिवेश नज़र आया. गड़बा, बोंडा, कोया, ये जो सीनरी हमारा निर्जरीन मैडम लगाए, उनका मेटिकुलस प्लान था. इनका मेटिकुलस प्लान लास्ट 2 मंथ से शुरू हुआ. मेरे से बातचीत हो रहा थी कि एक सेमिनार नेशनल सेमिनार करने मुझे समय दीजिए. तो हम लोग सर के साथ बैठ के डिसाइड किए और आज इतने सारे ऑल ओवर इंडिया में पार्टिसिपेंट आए. हम लोग बहुत प्राउड फील कर रहे हैं. आप लोग आए, हमारे साथ रहे. और ये मेरा रिक्वेस्ट है, आपका पास जो भी आप यहाँ सीख के जाएंगे, 4-5 ट्राइबल लोग के साथ आप कांटेक्ट रखिए. जैसे बादशाह साहब बोले कि हम जब तक उनके पास नहीं पहुँचेंगे, हम अभी जो मीडिया में कल पेपर में पिक्चर में आने में कोई फ़ायदा नहीं है. हमको उनका पास जाना है, जाके उनका जो है दुख सुख का साथी देना है. वो सबसे बड़ा अचीवमेंट होगा. तो मेरा यही रिक्वेस्ट है. और आजकल का रिसर्च ऐसे सब जो चल रहा है, वो जो पेपर मीडिया तो हमारा PRO साहब निकाल देंगे. मगर मैं जो चाह रहा हूँ, जो भाषा साहब चल रहे हैं, जैसे एक्चुअल ट्राइबल लोग का जो जिंदगी जो गरीब है अभी भी है, और समृद्ध ओडिशा बनाने के लिए हम सबको बेहतर बेहतर काम करना पड़ेगा। और ये यूनिवर्सिटी इसलिए बना हुआ है कि ईस्टर्न उड़ीसा का एक इंटेलेक्चुअल हब बनेगा। और इसीलिए हमारा इंग्लिश डिपार्टमेंट जो रोल अभी किया है, आप भी जारी कीजिए, ऐसे ऐसे सेमिनार कीजिए, हमारा नाम सारा इंडिया में पॉपुलर हो। ऐसा एक सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी है, इतना सारे लोग आए, हमारा नाम आपको बढ़ाने के लिए हमारा जो फैकल्टी, एचओडी, स्टूडेंट, सबको जिम्मेदारी लेना है। सबको सहभागी से हमारा यूनिवर्सिटी बहुत ऊंचा जाएगा। और मैडम भी आए, हम उसको स्वागत करते हैं। और अंजलि साहब का रोल बहुत अच्छा है, आप सबको जानते हैं, कोई भी यूनिवर्सिटी प्रोग्राम में है तो मैं देखा इंग्लिश डिपार्टमेंट के स्टूडेंट में वेलकम गेट तक हम यहाँ तक जो लाए, इतना अच्छा उनका वेलकम रिसेप्शन था। इसलिए मैं उन्हें बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद दूँ। आपका डिपार्टमेंट बहुत अच्छे है और डिसिप्लिन है, और हम आगे बढ़ाने के लिए आपको बहुत सपोर्ट समर्थन करते रहेंगे। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
Thank you, sir, for your encouraging words. Now I would like to request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor N.C. Panda, sir, to deliver the visionary address. Sir, please.
Speak in the last day, maybe tomorrow or day after so, but you see, the people that we have already in our state, in our country, we don't respect them. We don't respect their culture, but we exploit every time. For our own interest, आम इंटरेस्ट पे आम जीवा तांको एक्सप्लोइट करबा, तुम नाचो, तुम गाओ, तुम पैसा देबू। अरे आमर कौन हबो? तुम पिला आसीबे, तुम तुमर प्रोजेक्ट करिवो, तुम हाईलाइट करियो, बट व्हाट दीस पीपल विल गेट? They are poor, still they are poor. But life, you know, one verse I will quote it because it is the seminar, Voices from the Hills. What is the meaning of hill? Mountain, pahado. This is the literary meaning, and the translation. You see, some translation sometimes may not be faithful. I remember the Vedas have been translated by so many scholars. Professor R.T.S. Griffith, he has translated Rig Veda, Yajurveda, and two other Vedas. Sometimes he has told, I am not in a position to translate these Sanskrit mantras, Vedic mantras into English. I am fearing to translate because I don't understand what the seer has told. What is his intention? It's not easy. Without knowing the culture, tradition of a particular religion, you cannot translate a single word. It's not, I mean, you cannot give justice to your translation. Because I know, being an author, being a translator, I understand the problem of a translator. And you believe that translation is not an easy task. Why? Because the wordings, because translation English, anuvada, anu paschat vadati iti anuvada. This is the literary meaning of anuvada. Anu paschat vadati iti anuvada. Jota ki whatever is told, you just understand the feelings of that particular word, language, poem, everything you have to understand. Then you have to translate. तो ट्रांसलेशन एक इजी जॉब नहीं है। बहुत लोग सोचते हैं हमने तो बहुत कुछ कर दिया, साहित्य अकादमी अवार्ड देती है ट्रांसलेशन वर्क के ऊपर। हाउ फार इट इज जस्टिफाइड? आप देखिए, number of mistakes you will find in these translation works. I have gone through, although I am not a jury, but I have gone through so many translation works, maybe from English to Odia, Odia to English, and from different languages. I have gone through so many translation works in my career. When I was in Punjab University, Chandigarh, I have seen a lot of works. It's not easy. And one verse I will quote, the hills. When I remember the hill, Kalidasa has quoted, started from his Kumar Sambhava, a great epic of Sanskrit literature, a great poet, because Professor Mahanti is the son of a great poet. Yesterday we have released the book, Vidut Prabha Devi ji, a great poet of this soil, and we are proud that he is the son of a great poet, and fortunately sir is with us. A great moment for us. All the eminent scholars are here for the first time in the history of this university. For the first time, for our Vice Chancellor, Professor Mahanti sir, and also Vice Chancellor Professor Basa, and so many things. Professor Basa has written many things and told many things. I know him since last 20 years because I am a student of architecture also, done some works in Indian temple architecture. I know him. I know his work. And Madam Besra in Padma Shri. See, all these things, all the great personalities are sitting here. And when I listened yesterday, Madam Besra, ମୁଁ ଭାବିଲି ଯେ ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମ୍ ଆମର ଭିଜିଟର ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମ୍ ମହାମେମ୍ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରପତି କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଆସିକି ସେମ୍ ଥିଙ୍ଗ ଆଇ ଫିଲ୍ ହିୟର ଦିସ୍ ଫିଲିଂ ଆଇ ହ୍ୟାଭ୍ ଫର୍ ହାର୍ ଦିସ୍ ଫିଲିଂ ଆଇ ହ୍ୟାଭ୍ ହାର୍ ଏହି ଫିଲିଂ ତାଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ ତେଣୁ ମୁଁ ଭାବିଲି ଯେ ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମ୍ ଦ୍ରୌପଦୀ ମୁର୍ମୁଙ୍କର ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମ୍ ଫଟୋକପି ପୁରା ସେ ଯାହା ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମ୍ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ସେମିତି ଦେଖନ୍ତୁ କେତେ ସିମ୍ପଲିସିଟି ତାଙ୍କ ମାଇଣ୍ଡରେ କେତେ ସିମ୍ପଲିସିଟି विद्या ददाति विनयम अरे विद्या ददाति विनयम जहाँ विद्या है वहाँ विनयता है अगर विनयता नहीं है तो विद्या का कोई अर्थ नहीं है नो वैल्यू ऑफ योर नॉलेज इफ यू आर नॉट आई मीन गोइंग डाउन so all these things we learned from what yes I forgot to quote that particular verse what Kalidasa has quoted regarding hills you remember अस्त्युत्तरस्याम दिशि देवतात्मा हिमालयो नाम नगाधिराज पूर्वा परत्तोय निधि बगाय स्थित पृथिव्याम इव मानदंड स्थित पृथिव्याम इव मानदंड द हिमालय माउंटेन ये आज का माउंटेन नहीं है हजारों साल से माउंटेन है और माउंटेन में कौन रहते हैं देवता रहते हैं ऋषि मुनि रहते हैं और ये लोग रहते हैं जो कि आदिवासी इनको हम आदिवासी कहते हैं वो आदि से हैं आज से नहीं है आदि से हैं और वी डोंट रेस्पेक्ट देम नाइदर वी रेस्पेक्ट देम नॉट देयर कल्चर एंड दे आर द ग्रेट सीयर्स दे आर होल्डिंग आवर कल्चर और उनको हम रेस्पेक्ट नहीं देते हैं और जो बाहर से आ गया उनको रेस्पेक्ट देते हैं अपने लोगों को सम्मान नहीं देते हैं बाहर से आ गया उनको सम्मान देते हैं दिस इज आवर दिस वी पीपल आर नॉट इन ए प्रॉपर वे We respect our own parents. We respect our own teachers. We respect our own Adivasis. They are the real. Adi means what? The Prathama. Adi Kavi, Valmiki. Adi Kavya, Ramayana. Who was Valmiki? Who was Vedavyasa? They are the real Adivasi of this soil. What Kalidasa has told, Asti Uttarasyam Disi Devata Atma. देवता लोग वहाँ वास करते हैं कहाँ हिल में ऋषि वास करते हैं मुनि वास करते हैं आदिवासी लोग वास करते हैं और हम किसको सम्मान देते हैं किसी को नहीं आजकल तो देवताओं के प्रति कोई सम्मान और देवता कौन है यही लोग हैं विद्वांसो ही देवा विद्वान ही देवता है यही इन्हीं को सम्मान देना है इसलिए जो मंदिर में रहते हैं वो भी हैं जो पहाड़ में रहते हैं वो भी हैं देवता हर जगह हैं और इसलिए वी रेस्पेक्ट द पीपल दोज हू आर स्टेइंग इन द हिल्स देवताज हैं गंधर्व हैं किन्नरज हैं अप्सरज हैं एवरी एंड दिस आदिवासी पीपल एवरीवेयर यू लुक आफ्टर ऑल दिस थिंग्स सो दिस इज आवर ट्रेडिशन वी आर फॉरगेटिंग आवर ट्रेडिशन वी हैव टू रिमेंबर वी हैव टू गो टू दिस पीपल to respect them, to call them, to share with them, to learn something, their dress, their culture, their language, everything we have to learn from them. और आमे जाओ जो तांकु शिखिया पाई उल्टा काम करू जो we have to learn many things from them so that our tradition can be well preserved. Anyway, nothing to say more. It already time is past. More than 2 and you people are hungry and बुभुक्षिता किम न करोति पापम संस्कृत में कहा गया है कि जो भूखा है जो भूखिला अच्छी से कौन पाप न करी पारे he can do anything so because I am a student so of Sanskrit so nothing to say more because Mahati sir कहला पारे बाचा sir कहला पारे मैडम बेसरा कहला पर किसी ना कहवाई किंतु जेहेतु मु ये ट्रेडिशन सहित जोड़ा है संस्कृत हो आर्किटेक्चर हो बुद्धिज्म हो कल्चर हो एवरीथिंग दैट आई हैव इन माय माइंड आई कैन स्पीक 2-3 hours but anyway I must congratulate head of the department of English Dr. Nirjaran Tripathi very well prepared seminar बहुत सुंदर इतने सुंदर चित्र लगा है जी वेल डेकोरेटेड वेल फर्निश्ड दिस इज माय वर्डिंग्स बहुत सुंदर आउ भल भल विद्वान माने आसी ये भी ऑर्नामेंटेड एवरीथिंग हाँ मु सेदिन भी कही न सा सभा यत्र न सन्ति वृद्धा न ते वृद्धा जे न वदन्ति धर्मम से सभा नुहे जो वृद्ध माने नहांती वृद्ध माने अर्थ हो ज्ञानी आ जो से ज्ञानी से नुहति जो कि धर्म कथा कहते कि ज्ञानर कथा कहते तेणु दीज आर द ग्रेट स्कॉलर्स एंड आवर यूनिवर्सिटी इज रियली थैंकफुल टू ऑल दिस ग्रेट एमिनेंट पर्सनालिटीज विथ अस प्रोफेसर महांती सर प्रोफेसर बासा सर मैडम दमयंती मैडम so really great a great occasion for this university and I congratulate again to our head of the department our registrar our finance officer all they have supported so this is the way that we are supporting this particular seminar we are organizing and you don't believe last week we have organized a seminar in the course on tribal culture yesterday also in Odia department organized another seminar on tribal culture and so today also it is same tribal culture so everything it is well organized and finally we'll meet again after lunch tomorrow also and those participants I have seen those who have come from outside I again welcome to them and really hall is totally full and nobody is healing nobody is जहाँ कहते ओडिया रे nobody कहीं हलु नहांती समस्त शुणुचंदी सारंकर महांती सारंकर जो बाणी उद्बोधन गोटे पर सार कोट करुचंदी विभिन्न जिनस भाषा सार मध्य विभिन्न जिनस कहले लास्ट आंसर भी देले से जिनस ये जिनस कौन होची जन को विद्वान को सुनिला पर आ माइंड रे किछ न थाए आम माइंड मध्य एम्प्टी but anyway I am really grateful to our eminent scholars like Professor Basa sir Professor Mahanti sir Damayanti madam and all those who are sitting here so thank you all thank you for your participations सबको समस्त को नमस्कार जय हिंद जय भारत नमस्कार
Thank you, sir, for sharing your vision and guiding thoughts. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Prasenjit Sinha, Assistant Professor, Department of English Language and Literature, to propose the vote of thanks. Sir, please.
Good afternoon to one and all. It is a privilege to witness and experience such a grand event, a hall packed with intellectual giants, dons of different disciplines and aspiring scholars. As we have reached the final phase of the inaugural ceremony of the National Conference entitled Voices from the Hills, Tribal Literature, Indigenous Knowledge Systems and Cultural Memory, a multidisciplinary perspective, I am thankful to our HOD Dr. Nirjani Tripathi for giving me the opportunity to offer the formal vote of thanks on behalf of the Department of English Language and Literature, Central University of Odisha, Koraput. As we will reach 80 years of independence in a year, decolonizing the mind is the need of the hour, and the opening speech of our esteemed chief guest, an eminent archaeologist and anthropologist, Professor Kishore Kumar Basa's enlightening insights would help our participants regarding the way forward. Listening to the original voice is necessary for researchers, especially when it is about tribal life, literature and culture, and the informative discourse by Madam Damayanti Besra has enriched our brain, and it would boost us for these 2 days and beyond to continue our involvement with tribal literature, culture and knowledge system. Professor Sachinananda Mohanty's name has been an inspiring one for all the students and scholars of English literature since decades. He has been a guiding figure for many in the field of academics, research and administration. It is a privilege to meet him in person and listen to his loaded, thought-provoking keynote address, which would act as the guiding force for the budding scholars and enthusiasts. Finance is the key to every program, and we are thankful to our esteemed finance officer, Sri Duryodhan Sethi sir, for his support for this event and hope for the same during future years. We are thankful to our supportive registrar, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Lenka in absentia, for his continuous cooperation in all activities and official procedures, and we expect the same in the upcoming months. We are extremely thankful to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor N.C. Panda sir, who has always been kind to extend his support to this department as a man of language and literature, and this conference would not have been possible without his consent and support. Participants and paper presenters are the soul of any conference, especially the physical presence in an offline event is indeed praiseworthy due to the tiresome travel time one has to experience. But no one has ever achieved anything significant without traveling far. We also thank the dignitaries, chairpersons, who have arrived here to listen to the voices from the hills, a far-off place like Koraput, having links to Ramayana and the feel of paradise. No mission can be accomplished without a team effort, and no team can achieve success without a team leader. Thanks to the team, Department of English Language and Literature, and the team leader, Dr. Nirjani Tripathi, respected faculty members, sincere research scholars, and dedicated PG students for their successful planning and execution of this intellectual venture. We heartily thank all the HODs, faculty members, public relations officer, technical team, support staff, and each and every single soul who directly or indirectly contributed for this event. Finally, we offer our thanks and devotion to the goddess of the voice and knowledge, Ma Saraswati, our local guardian, Ma Kanta Bansuni, and above all, the reason of all reasons, the elixir of the tribes, and the ultimate goal of all soul, whose presence has made this land Saora Srikhetra, Mahaprabhu Sri Jagannath. Jai Janajati, Jai Bharati. Dhanyavad.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we conclude our inaugural session. Thank you.